Good evening, and welcome to Delete Everything with Patrick Wall and Riley Bowen. On this, the third and final chapter of our series on the Underground Railroad. The last 2 weeks, you've heard tales of horrific human atrocities, brave gambits for freedom, steadfast allies of emancipation, bloody revolution, and the insidious, pervasive slave hunters. Through it all, the secret network of brave souls risking life, limb, and liberty to shepherd fugitives to greener pastures. Tonight, you'll have the chance to glory in some of the legends that managed to run the gauntlet of liberty, and through their courage, wit, and not a small amount of luck, won their freedom. Through the inspection of first-hand accounts, as well as an autobiographical narrative, and even some fictional retellings, we've assembled a selection of some of the boldest and most inspiring escapes of the Underground Railroad, and we'll be retelling them in the form of a historical textbook, with an informative chapter followed by a discussion. While this is a departure from our usual format, it is not the only departure you will notice tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the serious nature of the subject, we at Delete Everything will not be making any penis jokes on this episode. Our most steadfast listeners may find this hard to swallow, but we've come to the decision after rigid examination of the topic and a long, hard conversation.
Stop. You're doing that on purpose. We're not doing that.
We're not. You're exactly. We're not doing that. We've come together on this topic.
We have agreed.
I know it's hard, Patrick. We have to take a hands-off approach to penises.
Okay. Agreed.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, in any case,
we're going to do that.
Thank you. And please enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Delete Everything podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Wall, and with me, as always,
I'll be your conductor on the Underground Railroad. My name's Riley Bowen, and I'm here to shepherd you to freedom.
That is, yes. I'm just here to watch. As always, hey, thank you to everybody who has left us ratings and reviews. We got a rather funny one from... was it Cruzan Mutt?
Mm-hmm.
Cruzan Mutt on Apple Podcasts that said that we were the love child of SNL and an Oxford professor.
Yeah.
Which made us giggle.
Which one are you? Are you all of SNL? Or are you an Oxford?
Actually, when I read it, I was like, which SNL cast
Yeah, what
are we
season?
Talking? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop
I want to be Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
I was like, I'm going to stop being a bitch and just take the compliment. So thank you, Cruzan Rum.
Cruzan Rum. This episode brought to you by Cruzan Rum.
Cruzan Mutt. Do you think Cruzan Mutt drinks a lot of Cruzan Rum? You should upgrade your rum because that's trash rum, Cruzan Mutt.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
I like my rum to taste like bananas.
Take it back.
Listen.
What do you got? Why are you hating on our biggest supporters? You just left us a good review.
You don't even know that it's a she. That's you being presumptuous.
Okay.
Cruzan Mutt, you rule. Thank you so much. To anyone who has not left a rating or a review, listen, on Spotify, you can do it real easy. You can even comment on individual episodes. You'll see other people's comments there. On Apple Podcasts, that one is weirdly weighted, really heavy. I don't know why, but Apple Podcasts has a big, I don't know. It's just important. I don't know.
Is it because it's your pet podcast program, or is it because it actually is
no, it really is. Those reviews are weighted really heavily. I don't know. I feel what the difference is.
I feel like the ones that mean the most to me are Audible reviews.
Audible reviews. I think we can I have to look into this. I think we can give a promo code for Audible and
yes.
If people that use the promo code, they get some shit and we get some shit. So I'm gonna have to look into that. But yeah, Regardless.
Use promo code Deleety Beady Big and Bouncy for 10% off your next purchase of hentai.
Hell yeah. Tentacle porn
Audible
only.
hentai.
Hentai tentacle porn.
You just get the noises. Oh no.
Well, it's only the ones that we like the most, so that's.
God damn it.
And we
This is starting off really well.
We like the sounds of those octopus suckers. This is off to a just off the rails kind of start.
Fantastic. Well,
that was an intentional pun.
This has been a hard fucking task, this 3-episode run.
Do you remember when we did Westward Expansion and that was a 3-parter? And
yeah,
we
by the third one,
to break it up.
Your mind.
We had to break it up. We were like, we got to do a different thing.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, we're just barreling into the 3rd episode of Underground Railroad here, and it was tough. But I will say that this episode is a little bit easier because we're not going to be as rigid with the history of everything.
Right,
we're more like we're going to be just telling stories of escapes.
Yeah.
Some of them firsthand accounts, and some just sort of like legends.
And I'm not a coffee mucusy mess this week, which is nice. I'm still a little hoarse, but like.
Are you still high on cough syrup?
I'm not. I didn't take any cough syrup.
Maybe we tone it down on the spirituals this week.
I would like to first and foremost apologize for my impromptu Negro spirituals while talking about Nat Turner.
Kill the babies too, huh?
I talked about killing babies and chopping off feet and used the term whitey several times, and I don't know that it's okay. I
personally am offended.
Well, sorry, whitey. But at any rate, I hope nobody took offense to that. It was all in good fun, and I think we have been very, very, very vocal on the fact that we are supportive of all of those who had to suffer through slavery and who made the very brave decision to run away via the Underground Railroad, or not via the Underground Railroad.
I took it as a very Wesley Willis-esque Kill Whitey tribute.
Boy. Next up, I'll be doing Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You guys just do yourselves a favor. Go on your Spotify or wherever you get your weird music, and
when you're done listening to
this, and look up Wesley Willis and check out the song "Kill Whitey" because that is a banger.
Or any of his songs. They were all just. You know what?
Rock on London, Rock on Chicago.
Let's not
Wheaties,
get
Breakfast
into
of Champions.
Wesley Willis right now. But Wesley Willis was either a musical genius or a homeless guy with a MIDI player, or both.
Rock and Roll McDonald.
Rock and Roll McDonald.
Yeah, Rock and Roll McDonald. Yeah.
See, even producer Drew knows the song.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, if you have
I
not,
Want Spider-Man's Ass. That's a good one.
If you have not, please get on whatever you're listening to. Give us a rating. Give us a review. That is very, very, very important to us. If you're enjoying the show and you want to support us, that's the baseline, best way you can do it. If you want to send us a message, deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. You can tell us anything you want, literally anything you want. If you have a show idea, cool. If you just want to say, hey, I really like listening to you guys, that's cool too. If you want to like bitch about your mom is being a cunt, you can say that. We're gonna respond. We're gonna send you something back, and we're gonna say, hey, sorry. So,
sorry, this isn't the venue for that. You fucking reach out to somebody who cares, nerd.
Once we're sponsored by BetterHelp, we'll give you a number and a website. And obviously at the end of the episode, as always, we'll give you
use sponsor
all of
code delete my meat for 10% off of BetterHelp.
At the end, as always, we'll give you all of our social media, other ways of supporting the show. And with that, we are fucking off to the races.
All right.
Riley's still in charge of this one, by the way. It's been
a
strange vacation.
In charge.
It's been a weird vacation. I was telling producer Drew earlier because he's been taking over on the editing, which normally I have to fit editing and show research all into 1 week on top of, family and job and all that stuff. And it gets a little tricky. There's some late nights in there. And the last week, 2 weeks, Drew? On editing? Yeah, last 2 weeks.
I just picture you like wearing like a wife beater at night, baby's crying in the other room. You're like, shut that kid up, I gotta edit. The lights go out, you're like, damn it, we didn't pay the bill.
It's not quite that bad, but some days it feels like that. But yeah, the last 2 weeks, Drew's been editing, and you've been doing the research for the shows, and I'm like, what do I do other than just
and they've
obsess
been our
about weird
best
things?
episodes ever.
I hope so. I mean, they have been.
I've been pretty good. I don't know.
They have been. They've been great episodes.
I was running out of steam with this one, though. I got to tell you, like, I was doing a late night.
Same thing happened to me on the Westward Expansion.
I was doing a late night study, and I was very fortunate to come across something we'll discuss a little bit later. That is a massive firsthand account of, hundreds of slave escapes.
Yeah, we were texting about that. Last night before.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a lot. But like, I was up until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm a 9 o'clock boy. Like, I go to bed early.
Yeah.
And so like, I was up way late reading all these like different slave escape
accounts,
and they were amazing, chilling, horrifying, sometimes funny. There are fucking funny ones in there, because it turns out, this is cool, the conductors in the Underground Railroad and the people that ran safe houses and stuff like that, they would be actors. Like, they would be good actors because they had to evade suspicion on multiple different levels, right? You know, like, for instance, Harriet Tubman was known to be able to portray any emotion at any time that she needed to convey.
Interesting.
Like, her character...
She was like a cry on cue girl.
Yeah, exactly. Because it turns out that her character, the way that she got people to join her, was she would just play harmless old lady walking down the road singing a song, right? And the song would be a code that would be like, hey, I'm going to be making a run tonight. You know, I'm not going to even try to do like impersonate the song, but like, it would be coded in a way that would be like,
apparently I'm good at that.
Yeah. But it would be like coded like, hey, I'm going to try and make a run tonight, but I'll run by later and let you know if we're still on. And then she'd come by later and be like, no, too much heat on, you know, keep it quiet. But it would just all be under the guise of like a woman carrying a bucket of water down the road.
And singing a song.
Yeah, and singing a song. So nobody would even lightly suspect her.
Okay.
And if she got stopped, she had a million backstories. She could change whatever her emotional tone, her voice, like she could show no emotion, fear, whatever.
Okay.
And then as soon as, like, by all accounts, as soon as like they were on the run, it was like they're on the road, she just fucking dropped the whole act, and she's like, everybody shut the fuck up. We got to get out of here. Shut that kid up. And
she was a badass lady.
Another fun like little detail that I heard was that she would actually drug children that were coming with them to keep them quiet in the night.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, just like whatever. But I mean, this is the 1800s, so like whatever barbiturates were around at the time. Hey, eat this shit and shut up.
Some lithium.
Yeah, exactly. here's some opium distillate. Breathe this shit.
God damn.
And yeah, no, like she and the story that we relayed, I think 2 episodes ago, where she held a gun to a passenger's head and was like, "Shut up, or you're gonna die." That was serious business. But she said it a little more severely. Avoiding any expletives, she said, "Dead men tell no tales."
Okay.
Essentially.
Okay. The story that I know, and I think again I brought it up in Underground Railroad 1, and I think maybe we'll touch on it today. If you have it on your thing, I'm not going to add to the load, or maybe I will. I don't know.
Share the load
was one where they were.
That was our first Lord of the Rings.
Share the load. They were in a covered wagon, her and several runaways, and there were like slave catchers. What do we call them? Hunters. Yeah, slave hunters that were like following, like were on their tail, like knew, hey, that's the one, and they were like almost where they needed to be. And she was like, everybody grab a fucking gun. And as they got up on the fucking wagon, like this thing just exploded with a bunch of runaway slaves armed to the fucking teeth, and she was like, you guys are going to turn around and go the fuck back. And they did.
Yep. Some of her stories are so... Here's the thing about Harriet Tubman, is that the stories are endless.
Yes.
They're literally endless. Whether she was taking care of Union soldiers that were wounded during the Civil War, or she was just doing support work for various political activisms, or just standing up for what was right in general. I guess we could start with the Harriet Tubman story.
Okay.
There's one that I like quite a bit. Let me see here. Messing up my order, but okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, she already came up, so. So this is from Sarah Bradford's firsthand account of Harriet Tubman, 1891.
Sarah Bradford was someone else on the Underground Railroad, I'm assuming.
Yes, she was like an activist. She was a northern white lady.
Okay,
and she knew Harriet Tubman and would like work with her and do stuff like that, and knew her well enough that she actually wrote like her biography.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, And it's pretty cool. It's straight from the horse's mouth, so to say. You know, like Harriet Tubman told her all these stories, and then Sarah Bradford wrote them all down.
Okay, all right.
Trying to say some of these things, I should point out pretty quickly that a lot of the nomenclature that's used in firsthand accounts from escaped slaves is
not okay today.
Well, it's not okay. It's not okay to say, but it's also not okay to impersonate. There's a real song of the South feel to some of this shit that I am not gonna.
I don't think you need to like do the voice or anything.
Yeah, but it's the way that it's written. Okay, like when Sarah Bradford writes what Harriet Tubman is saying, she writes it with the punctuation and the spelling that would give it a more deep South black woman.
I have a
feel.
great example of that. Go back and read Huck Finn.
Yes, it's very much that. It's exactly what I'm saying.
And if you read 2 chapters into Huckleberry Finn, you find yourself suddenly in your brain, you know, you're just reading this in your head, you find yourself with that sort of Southern slave time cadence, and obviously the N-word is dropped frequently in that book.
As is throughout Sarah Bradford's work and
Right.
Through some other work that we're referencing here.
And
it was a very, very common thing to say back in the day.
Well, and it's a weird read because you suddenly find yourself talking like that, and you know, and in your own head. Like I remember the last time I read Huck Finn, which incidentally was at the gym we used to go to. Remember we'd go and do the fucking
it's funny.
massage, the water massage afterwards.
Jim, Huck Finn.
Oh boy.
No.
With no adjective in front of his name.
I owe that gym $500.
Do you really?
I do.
You never
went
canceled?
back or paid and it cancels.
Oh boy. We used to go and do the massage afterward, and they had the little tablets there, and you could like.
Oh,
do
you were
different
reading?
stuff.
I was reading Dracula.
Really?
Yeah.
I went through because it was a very short list of books, and I was like, man, I haven't read Huck Finn since I was a kid. And I remember sitting there doing the massage and being like, I'm not okay with the way that I'm reading this in my head. If I was saying this out loud, somebody would be like, hey, guy, don't do that. Yeah. And I'm like, listen, Mark Twain wrote this, and he was hardcore anti-slavery.
Yeah, I mean,
and Jim Crow.
I mean, like, if you look through the ages, you can always see that, like, the format through which you are a supporter of one thing or another changes drastically depending on the era.
Yeah.
So, like, the way that somebody who was in support of abolition at the time might sound savagely racist, and even be savagely racist in many respects to somebody now. But in any case, I'm going to do my best not to fucking say any shit like
Disclaimer, this is all written from a time.
Yeah, and I am not gonna do any fucking kingfish ass fucking like just deep bass black voice. I'm not doing it.
Okay. You know what, bud? I support you, whatever you do.
Speaking of Huck Finn, you remember?
I know where your heart
Do you remember
is.
the episode of The Simpsons? I love referencing individual Simpsons quotes, which you might know if you listen to this shit. There's the bit where like the kids are rising up in one episode to like tear down the school, and they're like ripping up the books in the library, and Principal Skinner calls out, "Not Huck Finn. I spent days crossing out the N-word." In syndication, that joke got changed to Sassback. So if you watched it in syndication after the initial release of the episode, there was like some outcry about it.
Mm-hmm.
So he would say, "Not Huck Finn. I spent days crossing out," and then you'd see the mouth not quite sync up with the Sassback.
What?
Sassback. They were sassing back because they were kids. You know.
That's dumb. That's not even.
It wasn't good.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you it was specifically not good because the writers of The Simpsons are like, this is bullshit.
I mean, okay.
The initial one's a good joke.
The initial one was a good joke. That's a hilarious joke.
Okay, so doing a Harriet Tubman story. There are quite a few.
Okay.
And it's a whole book with a whole bunch of narratives. But I like this one because it's actually after her career of shepherding slaves.
And this is from old Sarah.
This is from, yes, what did I say? Sarah Bradford. Okay.
R.I.P.
I assume, yeah.
Yes.
In the spring of 1860, Harriet Tubman was requested by Mr. Garrett Smith to go to Boston to attend a large anti-slavery meeting. On her way, she stopped at Troy to visit a cousin, and while there, the colored people were one day startled with the intelligence that a fugitive slave, by the name of Charles Nail, had been followed by his master, who was his younger brother?
Whoa, wait, what?
Ooh, yeah. So, a fugitive slave by the name of Charles Nail had been followed by his master, who was his younger brother and not one grain whiter than he, and that he was already in the hands of the officers and was to be taken back to the South. The instant Harriet heard the news, she started for the office of the U.S. Commissioner, scattering the tidings as she went. An excited crowd were gathered about the office, through which Harriet forced her way and rushed upstairs to the door of the room where the fugitive was detained. A wagon was already waiting before the door to carry off the man, but the crowd was even then so great and in such a state of excitement that the officers did not dare to bring the man down. On the opposite side of the street stood the colored people, watching the window where they could see Harriet's sunbonnet and feeling assured that so long as she stood there, the fugitive was still in the office. Time passed on, and he did not appear. "They've taken him out another way, depend on that," said some of the colored people. "No," replied others, "there stands Moses yet, and as long as she's there, he's safe." Harriet, now seeing the necessity for a tremendous effort for his rescue, sent out some little boys to cry fire. The bells rang, the crowd increased, till the whole street was a dense mass of people. Again and again, the officers came out to try and clear the stairs and make a way to take their captive down. Others were driven down, but Harriet stood her ground, her head bent down, her arms folded. "Come, old woman, you must get out of this," said one of the officers. "I must have the way cleared. If you can't get down alone, someone will help you." Harriet, still putting on a greater appearance of decrepitude, twitched away from him and kept her place. Offers were made to buy Charles from his master, who at first agreed to take $1,200 for him. But when that was subscribed, he immediately raised the price to $1,500. The crowd grew more excited. A gentleman raised a window and called out $200 for his rescue, but not 1 cent to his master. This was responded to by a roar of satisfaction from the crowd below. At length, the officers appeared and announced to the crowd that if they would open a lane to the wagon, they would promise to bring the man down the front way. This is where things get a little fun.
Okay. I'm still reeling a little bit that Charles Nail's master
Was his younger brother?
Younger brother.
You know, I don't know exactly how that went down.
Meaning dad had a baby with a slave and said, "That's my slave," and then another baby with another woman, but that child is the master, but he's not any whiter than Charles Nail.
Yeah.
And okay.
Hey, I mean, he probably was just like, I
Still
prefer
trying to
this
work it
one.
out.
So, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of particulars in this sort of interaction, you know.
Sure. So the crowd, it sounds like, is largely in support of the police not taking Charles Nail away.
Because this is a northern city. There's
is Boston.
a fugitive slave. This is
Right.
Boston.
Okay.
We talked about Boston last week.
We did.
You know, if I'd been there, you know, but this is the case. This is the case where Harriet is played by Mark Wahlberg.
Why do I feel like Marky Mark is going to be in every episode at some point when something terrible comes
We'll
up?
call this story Mark Wahlberg as Harriet Tubman in the Boston story.
I was there.
I was there.
And things
it
went
was
down
different.
I'm Harriet fucking Tubman.
Master nothing. Go fuck yourself.
I'm wicked fucking stubborn. You're not going to get me down the fucking stairs.
Okay. All right. So the lane was opened and the man was brought out. He was a tall, handsome, intelligent white man.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Charles Nail is a
white man.
tall, handsome, intelligent white man.
Mhm.
Okay.
With his wrists manacled together, walking between the U.S. Marshal and another officer, and behind him, his brother and his master. So like him that one could hardly be told from the other.
Okay.
The moment they appeared, Harriet roused from her stooping posture, threw up a window, and cried to her friends, "Here he comes, take him," and then darted down the stairs like a wildcat. She seized one officer and pulled him down, then another, and tore him away from the man. And keeping her arms about the slave, she cried to her friends, "Drag us out, drag him to the river, drown him, but don't let them have him."
Damn.
Yeah, she's like, she's pounding on cops. She's just like, "Fucking throw us in the fucking river."
Jeez.
It's like liberty or death is like fucking in the street that day. This isn't Harriet Tubman sneaking around the South. She's fucking
This is
fighting
Harriet
the
Tubman
cops.
like, yeah. You'll
Oh.
fucking kill us before you take us, motherfucker.
They were knocked down together, and while down, she tore off her sunbonnet and tied it on the head of the fugitive. And when he rose, only his head could be seen, and amid the surging mass of people, the slave was no longer recognized, while the master appeared like the slave. Again and again, they were knocked down, the poor slave utterly helpless, with his manacled wrists streaming with blood. Harriet's outer clothes were torn from her, and even her stout shoes were all pulled from her feet, yet she never relinquished her hold of the man, till she'd got him dragged to the river, where he was tumbled into a boat.
So she didn't even give a shit. She's like, my shit's all torn.
Yeah, fucking, I don't care,
Like,
whatever.
something might fall out here. I don't care.
Yeah,
I
she's
got
ready
a
to
job
rock.
to
She
do.
doesn't give a fuck.
God damn, Harriet.
So she had him dragged to the river where he was tumbled into a boat, Harriet following in a ferry boat to the other side. But the telegraph was ahead of them, and as soon as they landed, he was seized and hurried from her sight. After a time, some school children came hurrying along, and to her anxious inquiries, they answered, "He's up in that house in the 3rd story." Harriet rushed up to the place. Some men were attempting to make their way up the stairs. The officers were firing down, and 2 men were lying on the stairs who'd been shot. Over their bodies, our heroine rushed, and with the help of others, burst open the door of the room, dragged out the fugitive, whom Harriet carried down the stairs in her arms. A gentleman who was riding by with a fine horse stopped to ask what the disturbance meant, and on hearing the story, his sympathies seemed to be thoroughly aroused. He sprang from his wagon, calling out, "This is a blood horse, drive him till he drops." The poor man was hurried in, some of his friends jumped in after him, and drove at the most rapid rate to Schenectady.
Schenectady. That's
This is the story Harriet told to the writer.
bananas.
Yeah.
Well, so, all right. With anything, any larger than life figure, we've discussed this before. There's a lot of mystique behind these people.
And we've talked about how Harriet Tubman specifically would build up her own
Right.
mystique. You know, she's the one responsible for referring to people as like conductors on the
Right,
Underground Railroad
right.
or passengers. Or,
And so, part of you wonders like how rough and tumble and crazy this was, but it does not take away from the fact you've got, I'm assuming the officers, quote unquote, in this story were slave
no, this was the Fugitive Slave
Hunters.
Act was in a
oh,
effect.
this is during the Fugitive Slave Act, so they
like
had to return them.
the master was the slave hunter, his own brother,
Right.
who had showed up to claim him.
And the slave was a white guy.
I would assume that there's a little more fudging of the white in that respect, but yeah, looks that way.
Huh.
Yeah, who knows?
Interesting.
What would you say? You know?
Well, we know that there were white indentured servants, and we know that slave was used as a catch-all term for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, all that was kind of earlier. At this point, if we're already Fugitive Slave Act, then we're well into the 1800s.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what would you say about maybe like a slave-owning family having several generations of, bred slaves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Grandpappy had a half white slave,
And then that
had another until
and then
now.
that one had a baby with a white person, and so now
like,
there's not
intermingling until a certain point you can't even really tell.
now he's not, now he doesn't look quite so black, but he was born to a slave, so sorry. That's crazy.
I got another Harry Tubman one.
Jesus Christ. That literally hurts my brain to think about.
So this story is a more difficult one.
Okay.
I'll say. So Sarah Bradford has another account here of an escape that Harriet made with a man.
Okay.
She says here, of the many interesting stories told me by Harriet, I cannot refrain from telling to my readers that of Joe, who accompanied her upon her 7th or 8th journey from Maryland to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Joe was a noble specimen of a Negro and was hired out by his master to a man for whom he worked faithfully for 6 years.
Jesus.
This one's a little long, but just bear with me. We're telling stories here. This is the episode.
I know that we said that some of this language was going to be certainly outdated and a little odd to hear, but noble specimen of a Negro
Noble specimen.
definitely caught me off guard.
Well, there it is.
But yeah, there's nothing we can do for it. These are written words from the 1800s.
I'm not going to do the voices, but I'm going to read what's on the fucking page.
Yeah, you have to. That's just the way it is.
So Joe was, as said,
Bruce Hornsby.
just the way it is. Joe was a noble specimen of a Negro and was hired out by his master to a man for whom he worked faithfully for 6 years, saving him the expense of an overseer and taking all trouble off his hands. At length, this man found him so absolutely necessary that he determined to buy him at any cost. His master held him proportionally high, however, so by paying thousands of dollars down for him and promising to pay another 1,000 in a certain time, Joe passed into the hands of his new master.
Mm-hmm.
So a very valuable guy, monetarily in that.
Sounds that way.
All people are valuable in the abstract. But
Joe was good at overseeing.
yeah. I mean, which is, You know what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what? You gotta oversee some shit.
My heart's been broken for 3 weeks now, and I'm just ready to get to the next subject.
So, as may be imagined, Joe was somewhat surprised when the first order issued from his master's lips was, "Now, Joe, strip and take a whipping."
Oh,
Joe's experience of whippings, as he had seen them inflicted upon others, was not such as to cause him particularly to desire to go through the same operation.
yeah, no shit.
And he naturally enough demurred and at first thought of resisting. But he called to mind a scene which he had witnessed a few days before in the field, the particulars of which are too horrible and too harassing to the feelings to be given to my readers. And then he thought of it best to submit. So he was like, I don't think I am going to get whipped, actually. I don't want to. And then he thought about something that he saw in the field that week that was so horrific that he was like, actually, maybe a whipping's not so bad. But at first he tried remonstrance. "Master," said he, "haven't I always been faithful to you?" This is where I'm not doing the voice, by the way.
Yes.
Because the way this is written is "Master, haven't I," right? And I'm not doing that shit. So, "Master, haven't I always been faithful to you? Haven't I worked through sun and rain, early in the morning and late at night? Haven't I saved you an overseer?"
By the way, remonstrance means a forceful, reproachful protest.
Ah, yes. Which is what he's giving. So,
Yes.
"Haven't I saved you an overseer by doing his work? Have you anything to complain of against me?"
So this is the guy that really, really, really wanted to buy him.
This is the guy that and then did buy him.
He said,
And his first thing
he's
is like,
so valuable as an overseer. I need to have him.
and the first thing
I'll
he
pay you
says,
this much now. I'll pay you this much
Right.
later. Now he's mine. First things first, bud. I'm going to
"Strip
whip
down,
the shit out
I'm
of you.
gonna whip you."
What the fuck?
And Joe's like, "Hey, whoa, hey, I've been working for you for 6 years now.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?" Right? And
Which seems like a perfectly logical response to this.
he says, "No, Joe, I've no complaint to make of you. You're a good worker, and you've always worked well. But the first lesson
The word wasn't worker, was it?
the first lesson my workers have to learn is that I am master, and that they are not to resist or refuse to obey anything I tell them to do. So the first thing they've got to do is be whipped. They resist, they get it all the harder, so I'll go on till I kill them.
Jesus
But
Christ.
they've got to give up at last and learn that I'm master."
Just real quick, you substituted the word
Yes, you got it.
worker
Everybody
for-
figured it out.
No, because you gave me a meaningful look.
I gave a meaningful pause in general. I think everybody knows what the fucking word is here.
I'm just so if in case anybody missed it, where he used worker, there was a different word there.
Yes. So if you hear a meaningful pause,
One that we're not going to say on this podcast, certainly not on this topic.
Joe thought it best to submit. He stripped off his upper clothing and took his whipping without a word. But as he drew his clothes up over his torn and bleeding back, he said, "This is the last." That night, he took a boat and went a long distance to the cabin of Harriet's father and said, "Next time Moses comes, let me know." It was only a week or two after that the mysterious woman who no one could lay their finger on appeared, and men, women, and children began to disappear from the plantations. Like, bit by bit, she's like gathering them, just like whoop, whoop, whoop.
Shrink.
Yeah,
Shrink.
yeah, and just walking down the road singing a song, And then
This
later
little
that
kid's
night,
real close to the fucking river. Shrink.
right? Yeah, whoop, whoop,
Not going to see that one again. Must have drowned or something.
One fine morning, Joe was missing, and his brother William from another plantation, Peter and Eliza too, were gone. And these made part of Harriet's next party, who began their pilgrimage from Maryland to Canada, or as they expressed it, from Egypt to the land of Canaan. Their adventures were enough to fill a volume. They were pursued, they were hidden in potato holes where their pursuers passed them within a few feet, just like Frodo, Bilbo, Merry, and Pippin when the Ring Wraith finds them on the road. Get off of the road! The whole thing? So a lot like that.
I thought you were talking about when Frodo and Samwise fall down the mountain right at the gates of Mordor, and when they think they're going to go through the front door rather than go through Minas Ungol. Is that where?
Minas Ungol, the stairs?
Yes.
Yes.
The
stairs.
That's where Shelob lives.
Yes.
Anyway, and they get caught in the rocks while the army's coming in through the gates of Mordor, and they throw the elvish cloak over them so they look like a rock.
Yeah, the leaves of Lorien don't fall lightly.
Guards!
So they were scattered and separated and led by guides in a roundabout way to a meeting place again. They were taken in by Sam Green, the man who was afterwards sent to state prison for 10 years for having a copy of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Okay.
Right? That's like having Mao Zedong's little red book in this shit. It's
Right.
like, hey, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
You reading Stowe up in here?
Oh my God.
So, hunted and hiding and wandering, they came at last to the long bridge at the entrance of the city of Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
The rewards posted up everywhere had been at first $500 for Joe, if taken within the limits of the United States, then $1,000, then $1,500.
Wait, so they could go up to Canada? That can't be right.
Why couldn't they?
Because it's a sovereign nation.
We talked about this in the last one. Do you think they give a fuck? They're bounty hunters.
That's true.
These are criminal people. They're hunting human beings.
But this is all also happening during...
Who's going to save them? Mounties?
But this is also when the Fugitive Slave Act is...
Yeah, it's active in the U.S.
part of federal law, right?
But like, how heavily patrolled do you think the borders were at that time? It's not that hard to get into Canada now.
No.
Just letting everyone know. The rewards posted up everywhere got higher and higher. And then $1,500 in all expenses clear and clean for his body in Easton jail. So if you could get him, kill him, put him in the jail, and send proof of his body, you'd get $1,500. It was at that point, like, the slave masters was so upset. They're just like, I just want to see that he's dead. I just don't want him free.
Motherfucker.
Right? $800 for William, $400 for Peter, and $12,000 for the woman who enticed them away.
$12,000.
So the long Wilmington Bridge.
We're talking about a time when you could buy a whole ass fucking house for like $5,000.
You could buy like 65 acres for $12,000 back then. So the long Wilmington Bridge was guarded.
This motherfucker's about to take a mortgage out on his plantation to get Harriet Tubman.
Think about how
I need a second mortgage now.
Think about how indicative this is of how profitable it was to own slaves.
Yeah, but listen, there's no fucking way now or even probably then I could put myself in the brain of a fucking slave owner, but there's got to come a point. $12,000?
A lot of money.
That's going to bankrupt. There's got to come a point where you're like, well, I tried.
I couldn't come up with $12,000 now. The long Wilmington Bridge was guarded by police officers, and the advertisements were everywhere. The party was scattered and taken to the houses of different colored friends, and word was sent secretly to Thomas Garrett of Wilmington, who is a huge figure in the Underground Railroad, by the way. Like, I'm not going to do a Thomas Garrett section, but you can look him up. That guy is an American hero.
Is he the guy who had the big mansion built that had all the secret rooms and stuff?
Yes, indeed,
okay.
Yes.
All right, I do know who he is.
Yeah, there's some really cool shit for that guy, and I'd actually love to do a section on him. You can't do all the history all the time.
Sure,
but I'm mentioning him here. So Thomas Garrett of Wilmington was told of their condition and the necessity of their being taken across the bridge. Thomas Garrett's a Quaker and a man of wonderfully large and generous heart, through whose hands Harriet tells me 2,000 self-emancipated slaves passed on their way to freedom.
Wow.
He was all ready, heart and hand, always ready, heart and hand and means in aiding these poor fugitives and rendering most efficient help to Harriet on many of her journeys back and forth. A letter received a few days since by the writer from this noble-hearted philanthropist will be given presently. As soon as Thomas Garrett heard of the conditions of these poor people, his plan was formed. He engaged 2 wagons, filled them with bricklayers, whom of course he paid well for their share in the enterprise, and sent them across the bridge. This is what I was saying, like, these can be kind of funny too.
It's a ruse.
Yeah, exactly. They went as if on a frolic, singing and shouting. The guards saw them pass and, of course, expected them to recross the bridge.
Frolicking bricklayers.
Yes,
what a wonderful day.
It's just like some construction guys. Like, hey, what's going on, cops? Hey, we're just bringing some bricks over here. We're bricklayers. We're your jovial bricklayers.
Yeah,
everybody knows us around here. We're funny. We're funny guys. We got wagons.
Nothing but bricks in there, I promise.
After nightfall, and fortunately it was a dark night, the same wagons went back, but with an addition to their party. The fugitives were on
more bricks. I promise.
I just got more bricks. I don't know what it is.
I promise. What are you talking about?
The fugitives were on the bottom of the wagons.
Nice.
The bricklayers on the seats, still singing and shouting, and so they passed by the guards who were entirely unsuspicious of the nature of the load the wagons contained, or of the amount of property thus escaping their hands. And so they made their way to New York. When they entered the anti-slavery office there, Joe was recognized at once by the description in the advertisements. "Well," said Mr. Oliver Johnson, "I am glad to see the man whose head is worth $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah. From there,
I mean, yeah, even 50 when you were saying $1,500, I was like, even that seems like back then a lot of money.
And from there on, they make it out to Canada after that.
Good.
Yeah, Harriet, of course, shepherds him to Canada. And
Nice.
she's like, I don't like Canada. I like American bacon, and comes back.
Stupid. Yeah, she was like, my fucking work's not done.
Yeah, so like, what I like
That's,
about...
I think, the most admirable thing about Harriet Tubman is, we've talked a lot in the last 2 episodes about the stakes. The stakes of doing this, of being involved in this in the smallest capacity, much less in the capacity of crossing over and over and over and actually bringing large groups of people back and forth. And I think that's the most admirable thing about her is, as far as I can tell, there was never any faltering on her part. It was just like, this is my fucking job. Like I'm going back.
Yeah, that was her whole deal. It's like, the thing about Harriet Tubman that I've discovered the most...
At any point, she could have been like, okay, I'm in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, there's
This'll
always...
be easier.
I've saved 25 people. Hey, I think that's enough for me, right? Like, I'm going to lay down this heavy burden of mine. But it is attributed historically to a head injury, but she had visions from God that was like, fucking save people. The whole Moses aesthetic, she took that very seriously.
I mean, yeah, but like I said, at any point, she could have had a much less stressful, less anxious sort of life if she had just said, okay, I'm staying in Canada this time.
Yeah, and when she kept going back, she was a nurse all through the Civil War. She was one of the first. She was historically the first woman to lead like an armed attack in the United States. There's a cool shit in there. But this episode isn't just about Harriet Tubman. I just wanted to...
That lady would run the world if she was here now. Shit.
I mean, kind of. It's one of these classic stories of somebody who is bold and brave and then just gets old, man.
Yeah.
And that was Harriet Tubman. She stayed active in all of this. But by the time Sarah Bradford's taken this account, Harriet's very fucking old.
Right.
She's just a little old lady. She'll trying to help out here and
old
there.
Lady with some badass stories. Can you imagine being Sarah Bradford just sitting there like
she does things like
hearing story after story, just be like, God damn.
And you're talking to somebody who's like working at an old folks home.
Yeah.
Like literally just taking care of elderly people, like doing nurse stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember the time I put a gun to this guy's head.
Have you ever beaten up 3 cops at the same time?
Drown him, just don't let him take it.
Because I have.
Yeah, and I love that story so much.
I'll wipe my own ass, thank you.
I love that story so much, specifically for the fucking, like, I'll die, but they don't get him. I love that.
Yeah, that's badass.
That's badass. That's that shit. But, okay, there are other stories other than Harriet's, of course, in the Underground Railroad. Here is the tale of a man named Henry. Henry Box Brown, they call him.
Okay.
Have you heard this story?
Box Brown sounds familiar.
Yeah, see, he was made of a box. Not a real person, just a box. No,
okay.
No, he was... So,
I was like, okay, maybe I haven't heard this story.
Henry Box Brown
was a ruse.
Was born in 1816 in Louisa County, Virginia. Was a slave for 33 years. The pains he suffered and the reason he went on to escape were tortures of the heart and soul. Henry was very clear that he was never mistreated, actually treated better than most slaves. He related stories of being looked at by other slaves from other plantations because he had shoes and like a vest.
Okay.
And was like clean.
Okay.
Perhaps the best illustration of Brown's relatively humane treatment while enslaved is the description of his travels to a granary in a neighboring county. While he and his brother were there delivering grain to the mill, a number of resident slaves turned and gazed earnestly upon Brown and his brother. The slaves in Yanisville County were amazed to see them dressed in shoes, vests, and hats, and said they had never seen Negroes dressed that way before. When their first master was dying...
So they're an oddity.
They're an oddity, but, treated well.
Sure.
Ish. For, being slaves.
For property, yeah.
Yeah. When their first master was dying, the Brown brothers were summoned to his bedside. The young boys were excited, as they expected to be set free when he died. However, he simply commanded that they be obedient to his son, William, who would inherit them as his own. Brown was 13 years old at the time. Brown spent the next several years in Richmond, Virginia, a tobacco plant owned by William Barrett. Slaves there worked 14 hours a day in the summer and 16 in the winter. Brown exerted himself to the utmost to please Barrett, who rewarded him with a new suit of clothing, spending money, and a continued immunity to the whip. So he was treated well and favored.
All right. I'm just waiting for the fucking...
Oh, yeah, here it comes.
I'm just waiting for the drop.
This is the drop. This is the drop. In 1836, when Brown reached his 20s, he fell in love with Nancy, a woman enslaved by a Mr. Lee who worked for the local bank. Brown explains that their friendship ripened into mutual love.
Bankers had slaves? Jesus Christ.
You could have slaves. You didn't have to have a plantation. You didn't need a field to be worked.
You don't.
You could just have one in the house.
I know. You don't think about it, though. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if slavery was an option today, and if you could have a slave today, you could just have one that would just do your dishes.
Right.
You know, it wouldn't be about like fucking farming all the time.
Right. I know.
Brown explains that his friendship with Nancy ripened into mutual love, and they soon after asked for permission to be married. Brown was able to pay his wife's new slaveholder $50 a year to persuade him to keep her in his ownership, as well as $72 to rent a house for their family, which grew to include 3 children.
Okay.
In August of 1848, as usual, Brown left his wife and 3 children at home, where Nancy worked washing the clothes of her slaveholder's family. But when he returned, he learned that they had been sold to another slaveholder.
What?
A Methodist minister from North Carolina. Brown went to his master and begged to help in retrieving his family members, but was told only that you can get another wife.
What?
Yeah. So this guy's living like what would be considered a fairly comfortable life for someone in this situation, to the point that he's got all the permission, he's got money, he pays for his own house.
Yeah, he got permission.
Yeah.
He's paying for a house.
Like he's got a deal that's like, no, we won't sell them.
In perpetuity, right?
Yeah.
That sounded like $50 a month.
Or $50 a year.
Or $50 a year.
$50 a year is a lot.
And
that's
for
just
a slave that doesn't get paid.
It's not to own like his wife just so that she wouldn't be sold.
I can have her here in my house, and now we have children.
Right.
So you got to assume that was ongoing for several years.
Yeah, I mean, he has 3 kids.
3 kids, so at least 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Banged them out one after another.
So hundreds of dollars of this man who makes no money because he is a slave.
And then
one day, just no ifs, ands, or buts, no question about it. Just they're gone.
Here's a question. You may not know the answer either. So we've got a husband who is a slave to one slave owner. We've got a wife who's slave to another slave owner. Whose purview do the children fall under? Is it the wife?
Apparently the wife.
I guess, yeah, because that guy sold her and all 3
and the kids, yeah.
Fuck me.
This guy was essentially being paid to get 3 free slaves.
Oh my God.
Which is a horrible way to look at things. And, I mean, fucking worse for everyone involved.
Ugh.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
So, and then William's owner said, just get a new wife.
Yeah. So, extremely distressed by this betrayal, Brown resolved to escape. He burned his finger with vitriol oil. Oil of vitriol was an old name for concentrated sulfuric acid.
Oof.
So he was working in a factory, doing some factory work, and just poured sulfuric acid on his hand. He claimed that he was too injured to work in order to excuse himself from work and buy time to plan his escape. And in 1849, he heard in his mind these words: "Go and get a box and put yourself in it." There's a footnote with this about his confidence in the truth of this account that says, "Reader, smile not at the above idea, for if there is a God of love, we must believe that he suggests steps to those who apply to him in times of trouble."
He's the one who shipped himself.
Yes.
I did know William Box Brown. Okay.
Brown hired a carpenter to build a box and enlisted his friend Samuel Smith, a white Massachusetts native, and James C. Smith, a free African-American dentist and merchant, to help him make his escape. The journey was physically exhausting and dangerous, as Brown spent much of it on his head, upside down. despite the "this side up with care" memo on top of the box.
Fragile.
Yeah, so like they're like, "Hey, make sure you put this up, sit it up right like this," and the guy's like, "Yeah, absolutely, absolutely." Blonk, and
Well, at
just like tosses that shit in the wagon. And this is a 3.
Some things obviously never change.
Dude, this is a 3x2 foot box.
Yeah.
He is crumpled.
Crammed in there, yeah.
He is crumpled in there. I'm a short guy.
Yeah.
I would not fit in there. Like 3 by, nah. And yeah, all he brought was like a biscuit and like a thing of water to pour on his head if it got too hot.
Yeah.
So they put him in the box and they shipped it to the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society in Philadelphia. The journey was physically exhausting and dangerous. Brown spent much of the time on his head. Brown did not bring any food or water besides a water bladder to bathe his neck with in case of too great heat. After several hours of terrible pain in which death seemed an inevitable fate, Brown arrived at his destination.
Jesus.
Various images of Brown's resurrection from his box, the one that I've got here is actually from Boston newspaper, were used by abolitionists. So like this became a very common picture of just somebody like, whoop, popping their head out of a box.
Right.
Shipping you to freedom.
Jesus.
One art historian commented that these images of the unboxing were perhaps the most potent single metaphor that abolitionists used for the displacement of the traditional image of the runaway slave in popular imagination. So instead of the popular image of
them
running through the woods being hunted with chains and shit, you've just got like, shit myself.
Sounded like you said, I shit myself.
I came by the railroad.
Which I don't know how long was he in this box?
He was only in the box for like 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was like a real quick ship.
Okay. So he probably didn't shit himself.
No, probably not. He might have wanted to. But after he got out of the box and stood up, he said, "Hello, my name is," and then fell over on his face. He'd been upside down for hours. And the rush of blood to his head is like, blonk.
Oh, my God.
After a short time in Pennsylvania, Brown proceeded to Massachusetts, where he spoke at an anti-slavery rally in Boston. There, he won the moniker Henry Box Brown. Brown continued to fight for abolition by publishing his narrative and touring New England to promote it with anti-slavery lectures in the fall of 1849. He did the same in England the following year, and he also showcased a moving panorama called Henry Box Brown's Mirror of Slavery in 1850. You know what a moving panorama is?
Yes.
So for those that aren't in the know, moving panorama would be a big, colorfully illustrated roll of cloth, sometimes as tall as 8 feet, that would be stretched across a stage and rolled through so that it would tell a story as it rolled past. So his entire narrative was illustrated on this big roll, and he toured Europe and America, like showing everyone this escapade.
Right. Imagine like a big scroll, and it starts on one side, and you roll it out as it's winding in one side as it.
If you think of a panorama, you're thinking your iPhone. You know, imagine if you took a panorama with your iPhone and then you printed it out and then you rolled it up.
I guess that's not a bad way of looking at it.
So he moved to England later that year in fear of the Fugitive Slave Act. This was 1850, which was passed soon after. He exhibited the panorama in Liverpool, Manchester, Lancashire, and Yorkshire through the spring of 1851 and continued to lecture. Brown returned to the United States from England. I like this ending. In 1875 with his new wife and his daughter Annie, because he never found his family.
Oh, Jesus.
And he performed as a magician.
Well,
I like that part. I like that he, he found freedom and he found a new life. He opted for
something fun,
something fantastic,
fun and frivolous.
Yeah, it's like
okay,
because he himself was a magic trick. I like that.
Normally I have critical things to say about magicians. However,
well, fuck you.
I'm gonna give it to this guy because you earned it. You earned it, William. Whatever you want to be
rabbit out of a hat, nothing.
You want to be a mime? Go nuts. You've earned it. Whatever weird thing that I would normally talk shit about, he can do it because he's got a fucking carte blanche as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the date and location of his death are unknown, but he still looms large in the legend of the Underground Railroad.
Hey, you gotta think, man. Wow, that's so crazy. Born into slavery, spent the first 33 years of his life in slavery, lost a wife, lost 3 kids, then manages to get himself free, and then suddenly is like touring Europe, like in England.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about, like, there had to have been moments where he sat down and was just like, how the fuck did I get here? Like this
I
is
think about
what a
shit like
crazy
that all the time.
ride.
Because my life has been interesting, but like not to the extreme that like many people's
Jesus.
have. And I spend many an evening staring off into the distance, like contemplating shit. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm a big porch sitter.
I mean, that's a wild ride for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to even born into slavery. There's no way to even foresee that ever happening in your life.
Well, no, because you live and die there.
Right.
That's the whole thing. That's like
Everybody that you know lived and died there. Everybody that you grow up around lives and dies there. Like
the shit that really
that's
gets
bananas.
me about all of the discussion around slavery and the people that were pro-slavery in general is like not one person born into slavery was ever just like, this is fine.
Yeah.
They were never
that
like,
should be
I like being a slave.
That should be indicator number one.
Like nobody was Sam Jackson in Django Unchained. Nobody was like this is great. I love being a slave. Every single slave ever born was like, huh.
Well, I'm sure there were, you referenced Sam Jackson and Django Unchained. I'm sure there were people who, because they were in positions where they had it a little easier than, the slaves that were spending all day in the brutal fucking heat doing manual labor.
There's definitely a sort of like an indoctrination,
right? And those
Stockholm syndrome kind of thing.
And even if it wasn't that, even if it was just playing a role, you know what I mean? Like,
look, you remember
I have to act this part because this is how I stay here and don't have a way harder life.
Do you remember when you were a kid, before you ever traveled or lived anywhere other than where you were born and grown up? Like, was there a period when you were a child where it was just like, this is where I live?
No.
Well, when I was born, I lived in fucking Royal Oak, Michigan until I was 15.
Right.
And with some very small like variables to travel and visit a couple places like in Canada and I think I came to Florida like one time. I was like, I'm going to live and die here. And I wasn't having a good time there. It was a shitty fucking place to grow up, or at the very least, my experience is not so hot.
Right.
So like growing up in that, but never even contemplating leaving. And when it was suggested by like my parents that we were going to be moving to Florida at like 15 years old, where I was fucking miserable, like shit was bad. I was like, what move? Why?
Yeah.
God, no.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, huh? and I like to kind of chalk that up to just being young and not knowing any different. And hopefully as I grew older, I would start to like get like a different perspective. But you can't be sure,
We moved from Louisiana to Florida when I was 12, 13.
Mm.
But even prior to that, when I was super young, like 3 years old, we moved to Brazil for about a year and then we moved back. And that's not a
I know, sorry, I do that every time you say
not a brag. But yeah,
I like to summer in Brazil.
I did. We always moved. I'm sorry, we didn't always move. We always traveled a lot, specifically to see family and stuff. So I mean, it was a very sort of, I don't know, I don't want to call it jet setter lifestyle that I grew up with.
It's definitely more traveled. Like my lifestyle was definitely more sedentary than that.
Yes, yeah.
Well, from my perspective, like growing up in a sedentary way, like I had no designs whatsoever on like escaping that.
Right.
So I can only imagine. And dude, you see people like that all the time.
But by the way, just for the flip side of it, like I was used to going away and I was used to like being, in Brazil for months long stretches and whatever. And when I was told that we were moving, I was still devastated.
Yeah,
like,
I bet.
I had a friend group and all that stuff. I mean, that's a shitty time to move is like your early
Boudreaux,
teen years.
Hébert.
Boudreaux, Hébert, Deron, like all you name them all. They were all Thibodeau, you name them.
Thibodeau. But yeah, I mean, I had like some friends. I wasn't really worried about leaving like that. It was weird. But yeah, you see people like that all the time. That were just born and raised in their town, and that's where they live and die.
It's very strange. Yeah,
that's the way my father planned on living. It's like
I worked years ago at a restaurant with a guy who, this is in St. Augustine. If you're not from the area, St. Augustine, Florida is about 45 minutes south of Jacksonville, Florida, right? So I was working at a restaurant here in St. Augustine,
or a day's ride on a horse, as we stated.
We do the podcast in St. Augustine. I live in Jacksonville, so I'd make the drive frequently. That was a brag.
I know.
It was a huge brag.
Dude, he
Yeah.
lives in the most Jacksonville part of Jacksonville we've stayed in before.
I love it.
It's
That's
right
my
next
favorite.
to Wacko's strip club.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
I
Oh
love
yeah, you know.
it. Drew's like, oh, I know exactly where your house
It's the
is.
most Jacksonville.
You're right up the road from my buddy Jay.
Okay.
Jay was here. Jay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know Jay was there.
What up, Jay?
Well, Jay and I are going to hang out all the time now. At any rate, I worked with a guy, Dave, who man, I was probably 19 at the time, 18, 19, first restaurant job. And he was probably late 30s, early 40s. This guy lived in Palatka, which is the other direction. This is southwest of St. Augustine, and it's real bumblefuck. I mean,
Yeah. Palatka, if somebody sunk like $1 billion into Palatka, it would be like an incredible place.
right.
But
As it
now,
stands, statistically, it's one of the worst counties.
yeah,
It's
one
in
of, Putnam County.
Putnam County.
It's got one of like the fentanyl and meth capitals of the state
God,
and shit. Yeah.
fucking
The county my wife's from, actually.
rape, incest. I did an event for the.
I just moved my mother into Putnam County.
I did.
Actually.
I did an event for this is years ago. I did an event for the Florida Bar Association, like lawyer bar, not pouring drinks bar.
Ah.
And they had a judge from Putnam County up there, and he was talking about all the pro bono work that these lawyers had done in Putnam County.
Oh.
And part of his speech was, as you know, Putnam County is #1 in the state for, and he just starts listing things off, and it's like horrible. It's like
Yeah, Magdalena tells
child
horror
abuse,
stories about growing
sexual
up there, yeah.
abuse, rape, incest, this and that. And he's like, as you know, we're #1 in the state and all these. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to Palatka again. Not that I ever had a reason to.
Palatka's not even
before.
the bad part of that shit. Like fucking
No,
go,
it's not. You got to go to like
yeah.
Crescent City.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
Where I just moved my mother.
Yeah. But at any rate, so this guy, Dave, lived in Putnam County, lived in Palatka, and drove to St. Augustine for work. But my point being, this guy, born and raised in Putnam County, born and raised in Palatka, worked in St. Augustine. This guy is probably somewhere between 39 and 45.
Mhm.
Putnam County years tend to sit a little harder on a man's face.
Right.
So he could have been 28 for all I know. I'm kidding. Let's call him 40. Had never been to Jacksonville, Florida.
A rockin' fucking 50 minutes away.
He had never traveled.
I literally drove from Jacksonville, Florida to Putnam County.
He had never
yesterday.
traveled anywhere. He would hear me because even at that time in my life, I would travel places. You know what I mean? Like we would do family trips. I'd go back and visit Brazil, see family there. Like, so I remember one time I was getting ready to go on a trip somewhere and he's like, where are you going? And I don't remember where I was going, but I told him and he's like, man, that's gotta be nice. He's like, I've never even been out of the country. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. You know, you should try it. It's pretty cool. And he was like, man, I've never even been to Jacksonville. But I was like, what? Because also we're talking about, I don't know, early 2000s,
Mhm.
St. Augustine. Like, if you remember that time, you had to go to Jacksonville for a lot of things. You want to go shop for clothes? You got to go up to Jacksonville to the mall. Like, there were a lot of things. Now, St. Augustine is a little bit more like you can get pretty much everything you need here.
Yeah.
Back then, there were things that you just
Yeah, we
had to go that way.
gentrified the fuck out of this
But
place.
I guess if you're born and raised in Palatka, St. Augustine seems like the big city. You know?
Yeah. I mean, legitimately, like my wife's family, I'm not gonna get like too personal about anything, but like she escaped from Putnam County to
Right.
St. Augustine, you know?
Jesus.
Yeah. And now we travel as much as we can.
You have to.
But yeah, so
Anywho.
like I like to think of like that sort of like sedentary indoctrination, you know, and like you being beaten if you ever mention like, hey, maybe I'd like to like, not only can you not go to Jacksonville, Florida, to dream of going to Jacksonville will get you whipped and
right.
burned.
Yeah.
Like fucking like, and people are still undertaking the journey. That's the whole shit.
To be caught with a fucking book trying to learn how to read and write would get you whipped and
Yeah,
fucking.
fucking one copy of Harriet Beecher Stowe's
Not
shitty
even that,
novel,
the
Uncle
fucking-
Tom's Cabin. Will
Well,
get you
I mean,
sent.
traditionally, the only fucking book that most slave owners would allow slaves to have was the Bible.
That's a whole nother can of worms. We're gonna get into that in the history of religion fucking people over a little later this year.
That's going to be an 83-parter.
Hey, we sure would
I was
like
going
to
to go
get.
for 2 years straight.
We sure would like to get the fuck out of here. Oh well, you can't. Well, why not? why don't you read this book?
God
It
damn
tells
it.
you gotta stay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but we can't read this.
Wait.
It's okay. We'll teach you how to read the parts that we need you to
Wait,
read.
but if I flip to this page, it says you shouldn't be doing this to me. No.
no,
Flip
no,
it
go to
back.
the other page.
Flip
other
it back.
Page. The other page says that God says that I can.
God damn it. And he says that if you pipe up about it again, your tongue's coming out, motherfucker. But this other page, you know what?
No. Read the first. Just read the
just-
first part. Just read. Don't read that. Don't read the newer Testament. Read the older one. That's the one that we like.
Yeah, we don't like that hippie with all of his newfangled ideas.
Ugh.
Go back to the first part.
Well, actually, speaking to the point of how education can help liberate people, I want to talk about a guy named William Still.
I know William Still.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good friend of yours?
Not personally. I know of William Still.
So William Still was born in Shamong Township in Burlington County, New Jersey, to former slaves Charity, formerly named Sydney, and Levin Still.
Right, he was born free.
Yeah, he was born
Yes.
free to
Yes.
former slaves. He was the youngest of 18 children.
Wow.
Yeah. His parents had migrated separately to New Jersey. First, his father had bought his freedom in 1798 from his master in Caroline County, Maryland, on the Eastern Shore, and moved north to New Jersey.
They
Levin
got free and they got started on
a
a different kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Industrious.
Mm-hmm.
Wowzers. 18 children.
They loved each other very much.
They must have. My God.
Many, many times.
At least 18 of them.
So Levin Still stayed around in Maryland until 1805 in order to keep watch on his wife and children. After arriving in Evesham Township in New Jersey, they became friends with families named Still and assumed the last name in order to hide Charity's fugitive status.
Oh.
So William Still's mother, Charity, formerly named Sydney, was a fugitive.
Was a fugitive slave. Okay.
Yeah, his
Good.
father had bought his own freedom,
Right.
but
Right.
also freed slaves sheltering a fugitive slave.
Not good.
What did we say the punishment was for that?
You're a slave again.
Slavery. Oh,
Hey.
man.
What's the worst
Fucking
thing we can think of?
Spoiler alert.
Making you a slave again. Okay.
So his mother, Charity, escaped twice from Maryland. The first time, she and 4 children were all recaptured and returned to slavery. And a few months later, Charity escaped again, taking only her 2 younger daughters with her, and reached her husband in New Jersey. Following her escape, Charity and Levin had 14 more children, of whom William was the youngest. Through these children,
Did they ever recover the other 2 kids?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God.
Though these children were born, this is the fucking game, man. This is like, you hear this shit left and right. It's like, yeah, the horrifying human abuse. This the whole thing.
I don't know how much more I can take.
This is the last episode of this,
I
and
know
then
it is,
and
I
then
know.
I believe we'll have cured racism.
We better have fucking cured something. Jesus.
Though these children were born in the free state of New Jersey under Maryland and federal slave law, they were still legally slaves, as their mother was an escaped slave.
God, what?
Yeah,
So it does fall under
all
mom.
all of these children are still
makes sense.
under the jurisdiction of
That
the
makes
Escaped
sense.
Slave Act.
It makes sense because one of so many terrible things can happen to the father. So,
Well, as Selma Hayek said in the 1998 romantic comedy Fools Rush In with Matthew Perry, if the mother is Catholic, the baby is Catholic.
oh my God.
Everybody knows that one, right?
I don't, but thank you.
No, I don't.
So
Drew's been so much more engaged this episode. He's been real quiet the last 2 for some reason.
well, Drew, do you want to get in on this? You want to grab a mic?
No, I'm still not here.
So again, well, these children were born in the free state of Jersey. They were still legally slaves, but
Jesus
they were
Christ.
free by New Jersey law.
Right. Okay.
Right. You know, so like this is where you see that Harriet Tubman ass fucking congregation of people getting pissed off at slave hunters and
Well,
shit.
so
you know?
this is why it's so cool to look at things like this, because of these, listening to these stories, now you really see the nuance of it when we get into these stories where like the one brother was a slave and the one brother was the master, and they were both arguably pretty white / light skinned, and nobody
gets
knows,
fuzzy.
and like, so shit like this, like
Black,
okay.
white, it's a gray area.
fugitive slave law, right? This slave flees to New Jersey, where the Fugitive Slave Act demands that if somebody finds her and says, "Hey, we're taking you back," then that's
That's that.
law of the land.
Yeah.
But these children of theirs that were born after she had escaped, born in New Jersey, where the law says you're free, how does that even pertain? And
So,
it's like
yeah, so
crazy.
think of that. So a slave hunter would be like, I'm taking these 14 children.
Right.
But then the law of New Jersey would be like, no, the
No,
fuck
you're
you're
not.
not. So that would end up in court.
Right.
Like, have we talked about the Amistad trial at any point?
We have not.
So you know the movie Amistad.
I do know the movie
Steven
Amistad.
Spielberg's.
I know the ship Amistad.
Yeah, the ship Amistad.
Yeah.
So it was a revolt on a slave ship, right? That, after the slaves revolted, they macheted the shit out of the slave owners.
Yes.
And they attempted to make it back to Africa, but they ended up on the shores in America.
Right.
And then they were in court debating. The debate was very, very strong, and it was very popular all across America. They even brought like John Quincy Adams in as the defense attorney for the Africans, right? But the debate was never about whether or not they should be free. It was always about whether or not they were American slaves or they were Spanish slaves or Portuguese, possibly Portuguese, because it was a Portuguese ship that they were from. It was all about the exportation and ownership of them. It was never about whether or not they were human beings with the rights to be free.
With any autonomy.
John Quincy Adams' brilliant oratory skills was actually able to get them their freedom, which was cool.
Huh.
But that wasn't what the fucking court case was about.
I wonder if John Quincy Adams owned slaves.
I actually don't know if he did, but I know he was an incredibly outspoken abolitionist.
Right.
All the way until he died.
Fifth?
Number
5?
Fifth, yeah.
Fifth president?
There's a great moment in the movie Amistad where Anthony Hopkins is playing John Quincy Adams, and he's giving his speech, and he's looking at the busts of these different presidents, and he's like, all of these great men, George Washington.
He was sixth president.
Thomas Jefferson. And then he looks at the bust of his own father, and he goes, John Adams.
Yeah.
And it was such a good moment. Anyway.
Of the first 12 presidents, the only two to never own slaves were John Adams and John Quincy Adams.
John Adams and John Quincy Adams never owned slaves. Dad
and son.
Fuck yeah.
Good for them.
Way to go, Adamses.
Yeah, the Adams family.
So
no slaves.
So the Levins and their 14 children settled in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey in a small township named Shamong.
Mm-hmm.
Neither Charity nor Levin could free their two older boys who remained enslaved in Maryland. Levin Jr. and Peter Still were sold from Maryland to slave owners in Lexington, Kentucky. Later, they were resold to planters in Alabama and the Deep South. Levin Jr. died from a whipping while enslaved. Peter and his wife Vina and most of his family escaped from slavery when he was about 50 with the help of two brothers named Freedmen who operated mercantile establishments. Later, Peter Still sought help at the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society, seeking to find his parents or other members of his birth family. He met William Still there, but initially had no idea they were related because William Still was working at the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. Yeah. So as William listened to Peter's story, he recognized the history his mother had told him many times. After learning what his older brother Levin was whipped to death for visiting his wife without permission, William shouted, "What if I told you I was your brother?" Later, Peter and his mother were reunited after having been separated for 42 years.
Wow. So that was one of the kids that was left behind.
Yes. Yeah, one, Levin Jr., was whipped to death. But then Peter escaped at 50.
God.
And when he got to the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society...
just happened to walk in where his brother was working.
Exactly, yeah. That's a story.
Trying to find his family.
And there's his fucking brother.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's chilling. That gives me chills.
I know, dude.
That one's heavy.
That's crazy.
Another of William's brothers was James Still. Born in New Jersey in 1812, James wanted to become a doctor, but said he was not the right color to enter where such knowledge was dispensed. James studied herbs and plants and apprenticed himself to a white doctor to learn medicine. He became known as the Black Doctor of the Pines, as he lived and practiced at the Medford Township, New Jersey. James' son, James Thomas Still, was the third African-American to graduate from Harvard Medical School in 1871. Right? Isn't that cool? That's the grandson of escaped slaves.
That's badass.
William's other siblings include Levin Jr., Peter, James, Samuel, Mary, a teacher and missionary in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Mahala, who married Gabriel Thompson, and Keturah, who moved to Pennsylvania. So, William Still, by the time his brother finds him, he's working at the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society, right? He has a storied career helping people escape.
Thousands
of people escape from slavery through legal means, activism, and
Probably some illegal means too.
oh, I'm sure there were
Whatever gets the job done.
whatever gets the job done.
Yeah.
But this isn't a guy who went out and escorted people back.
Right.
He was an administrator,
Right.
right? But like the son of fugitive slaves.
But he was administrating like, okay, you're going to go here and then you're going to hide over here. And then this person, this is the network.
In his obituary, the New York Times proclaimed Still the father of the Underground Railroad. William Still helped as many as 800 slaves escape to freedom. He interviewed each person and kept careful records, including a brief biography and the destination for each, along with any aliases adopted. He kept his records carefully hidden, but he knew the accounts would be critical in aiding the future reunion of family members who became separated under slavery.
Nice.
Right? Yeah, so like that whole story just goes to tell you that like his passion after that was like, shit, we got to keep these records tight because there's got to be a way to track all of these lost children.
If not before, knowing that he had siblings out there, you know what I mean? Like it's I would imagine as soon as he started doing that, he was like, we've got like, you have personal experience with, I have siblings out there that got captured and never made it back. So you're here. Who are your people? Let's keep all this documented.
So
in case
his fervor, like what he was really going for, was more than just helping people escape, but reuniting families that were sundered by slavery, which is noble as fuck.
Oh my God, yes.
Like that's just fucking incredible. Still worked with other Underground Railroad agents operating in the South, including Virginia ports, nearby Delaware and Maryland, and in many counties in southern Pennsylvania.
Okay.
His network to freedom also included agents in New Jersey, New York, New England, and Canada. William Still provided material support and encouragement for Harriet Tubman to begin her work as a conductor of the Underground Railroad. She traveled through his office with fellow passengers on several occasions during the 1850s. Still also forged a connection with the family of John Brown and sheltered several of Brown's associates fleeing the 1859 raid on Harper's Ferry.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had
he was locked in. He was locked in with everybody.
This motherfucker, he had his shit fucking locked.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was the guy that like, if you're in the area, you gotta go through Still.
Yeah, find William Still. William Still help you out.
He's gonna,
that's the fucking
and this is like put you where you need to be.
He's in Philadelphia. He's got offices in Virginia. He's got agents in the Carolinas.
That's so cool.
Like, and they make their way back up to him. Always.
So cool.
So he did something very fucking cool, in my opinion, with all of this, all this shit.
That's one way of putting it, I guess.
Well, he self-published
all this fuckery. I'll give you that.
All this
it's a lot of fuckery.
Shit. William Still self-published a book that he's best known for.
Okay.
It's called The Underground Railroad in 1872.
Yep.
Where a bunch of his documented stories of formerly enslaved Africans are kept.
That's where we get most of our firsthand accounts.
Yeah,
for this episode and just history.
While I was looking for firsthand accounts of slaves, I mean, there's some cool shit that I can toss out there. Like, I've got some other stuff like Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery in Maryland to New York on September 3rd, 1838 by disguising himself as a sailor.
Yeah.
So when you were like, hey, fucking step your game up, Douglas. Like, no, he's an escaped slave. This motherfucker. He used papers provided by a free black sailor.
All I said was get your hands dirty, Frederick. You know what? He went the diplomatic route, and I will not take anything away from him. He did a lot of good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
I was making a joke.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, we can't knock the administrators as well as like the orators and shit like that.
Right. I was putting him up next to Harriet Tubman, which
I was going
to say I don't think it's fair.
Dog.
I don't think it's fair to put anyone up next to that woman.
Abraham Lincoln would have to fucking bow to that woman.
Absolutely. I think in most things, like not just in terms of slave, freeing slaves and abolition efforts. I think just if you go apples to oranges on any other sort of noble conquest.
Yeah, I'll take the Pepsi challenge on that.
You gotta give Harriet's got to be at the top of the fucking podium for
100%.
Any of it.
But I mean, yeah, there are other cool stories all around you can get like firsthand accounts. Like this one here, William and Ellen Craft were African American abolitionists who escaped slavery in Macon, Georgia, in 1848.
Wow, that's a trip.
That's a hell of a trip.
That's a long way.
They traveled train and steamboat to Philadelphia, where they arrived on Christmas Day, then continued north to Boston. They escaped this a ways. Ellen, who had lighter skin, disguised herself as a sickly white male slaveholder. William acted as her faithful enslaved man. They faced many, many dangers. And after they
Yeah.
escaped, they joined the black community in Boston's Beacon Hill. They spoke at anti-slavery meetings and eventually fled to England in 1850 after the passage of the Fugitive Slave Law, where they lived for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, they published a book about it.
Huh.
So, like, there are plenty of stories like that.
Right.
But if you want to really get into the shit, William Still's The Underground Railroad, I mean, it's fucking crazy, dude. It's 800 pages.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be nice to kind of wind down the episode with a couple of these accounts.
Okay.
Because, again, I'm not going to do the voice, but they're pretty hefty. So here's some excerpts from The Underground Railroad by William Still.
Okay. I'm ready for him. You were sending some stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's
illustrations.
There's 800.
yesterday.
There's 800 pages on here,
Right.
right? And this is like a digital scanner. Like somebody had like a vintage
Right.
copy
Yes,
and
yes,
they
yes.
scanned it. So I'm reading it directly off the page. The way that it's split up, there are some illustrations of various things, and if you look through the table of contents, it'll take you directly to each individual chapter.
Mhm.
But like a lot of the titles are like William Jordan, Louisa Brown, Arrival from Richmond,
Right.
Emmanuel White, Arrival from Virginia, Arrival from Maryland, Arrival from this.
So it's probably his documents that he had,
Yeah.
because that would be the first thing that he would do,
Well,
is put
because
their name and where they came from.
The way that these table of contents are really like kind of split up is a lot of these pages have these headers.
Mhm.
Like for instance, if I go to this one that says from Virginia, it just says from Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, Archer Barlow, alias Emmett Robin.
Mhm.
So there's like the story is there, but it doesn't give any indication of what the story is going to be.
And the Archer Barlow would be his slave name, and his alias would be his
His like
his
free
new name, now
yeah,
that
exactly.
he doesn't want to be found.
But if you go from illustration to illustration, all the illustrations have titles instead of just names.
That's
right?
what you were sending me.
Right.
yesterday, yeah.
So like, here's one called 5 Years and 1 Month Secreted.
Okay.
Or here's another called
5 years and 1 month secreted.
5
He's
Years and 1
hiding?
Month Secreted.
For 5 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's another called Fleeing from a Negro. Here's another called
Wait, what?
Here's another called Saltwater Fugitive. Let's read that one.
Okay.
Saltwater Fugitive. This was an exceptional case, as this passenger did not reach the Vigilance Committee of Philadelphia, yet to exclude him on this account would be doing an injustice to history. The facts in his case were incontestable, established in the Philadelphia Register in April 1854, from which the following thrilling account is taken. The steamship Keystone State, which arrived at this port on a Saturday morning, had just entered Delaware Bay, when a man was discovered secreted outside of the vessel and under the guards. When brought from his hiding place, he was found to be a fugitive slave who had secreted himself there before the vessel left Savannah on Wednesday and had remained in this place from the time of starting. So it says this pulled in on Saturday.
Mhm.
So from Wednesday to Saturday, this guy's just hanging onto the side of a boat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had secreted himself.
I thought he wasn't in the cargo hold?
He had secreted himself outside of the vessel.
Whoa, I missed that part.
His position was such that the water swept over and around him almost constantly. He had some bread in his pocket, which he had intended for subsistence until he could reach a land of liberty. It was saturated with seawater and dissolved to a pulp.
Holy shit.
When our readers remember the high winds of Friday and the sudden change to cold during that night, and the fact that the fugitive had remained in that situation for 3 days and nights, we think it will be conceded that he fully earned his liberty, and that the institution, which was so intolerable that he was willing to run the risk of almost certain death to escape from, had no very great attractions for him. But the poor man was doomed to disappointment.
More attractive than staying a slave, I
Yeah, right.
guess.
The captain ordered the vessel to put into Newcastle, where the fugitive, hardly able to stand, was taken on shore and incarcerated, and where he now awaits the order of his owner in Savannah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a bummer one.
Oh.
But that is so that's like the contents of which you find in William Still's The Underground Railroad.
Right.
Here's one called
So presumably this guy was sent
Yeah, he got
Back
caught
to
and he
Savannah.
got sent back, which is a bummer. But
Well, he got caught in fucking
but, like,
Massachusetts.
yeah, but think of just like these stories are crazy as shit. This guy clung to a ship on the ocean for
3 days.
3 days. Let's see here.
Wow.
Oh, something else.
When apparently the winds and cold were really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just freezing salt water.
Oh my God.
Also, at the bottoms of a lot of these pages, William still has installed small little like wanted posters
Mhm.
with little grips like $150 reward. Ran away from the subscriber on Sunday night, the 27th. My Negro girl, Lear Green, about 18 years of age.
I don't like that.
Black complexion, round
Sounds
features, good looking, and ordinary size. She had on and with her when she left a tan-colored milk bonnet, a dark plaid silk dress, a light muslin dress, and also a milk cape. The fuck is a milk cape?
This sounds like a girl that this guy's mad that he doesn't
Right.
get to sexually assault anymore.
I have reason to be confident that she was persuaded off by a Negro man named William Adam.
So he's, in addition to not being able to have his way with her anymore, he's angry that another slave
Says William
managed to-
Adam, black, quick-spoken, 5'10" high, a large scar on one side of his face, running down in a ridge by the corner of his mouth, about 4 inches long. Barber by trade, but works mostly at taverns. The
quick
above,
talking barman.
yeah, the above reward will be paid if said girl is taken out of the state of Maryland and delivered to me, or $50 if taken in the state of Maryland. Yeah, that's just like, my slave girl got taken away by a fast-talking Negro.
Well, also the way she was described seemed
She's pretty and she's well dressed and
Uh-huh.
she's like round features and
sounds diabolical.
yeah,
Sounds like there were some
fair
other.
skinned,
Yeah.
18 years old.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she's like, "Hey, bar guy, you want to get the fuck out of here?"
Yeah. Listen, the number of women by that description that have been taken in by a fast talking barman, I can say from experience, it's an endless number.
Well,
You gotta watch out for those bartenders.
Here's the story of that. It's called "Escaping in a Chest." Lear Green, so particularly advertised in the Baltimore Sun by James Noble, won for herself a strong claim to a high place among the heroic women of the 19th century. In regard to description and age, the advertisement is tolerably accurate, although her master might have added that her countenance was one of peculiar modesty and grace. Instead of being black, she was a dark brown color. Of her bondage, she made the following statement. She was owned by James Noble, a butter dealer of Baltimore. Butter dealer.
Hang on. This guy was a fucking made his fortune slinging butter.
$150 butter if I could get my slave back.
He's a fucking butter
And all
dealer.
the butter you can eat.
Not a butter manufacturer, a
He's
butter dealer.
He's
So
a butter
going
salesman.
door to door. May I interest you in some butter? Here's my attractive slave girl.
It's the best butter in Baltimore.
Oh no, where is she? She must have been taken in by a fast talking barman. Fucking
Fast talking bar man, be the butter man. But it's the best butter in Baltimore.
fucking butter dealer.
So, Mr. Noble, a butter dealer,
Oh boy, raking in them butter bucks.
so he inherited Lear by the will of his wife's mother, Miss Rachel Howard, by
Oh,
whom
she sounds
had-
like a bitch.
Yes, she does. By whom she had,
dying. You can have my slave girl. Fuck you.
by whom she had previously been owned. Lear was but a mere child when she came into the hands of Noble's family. She therefore remembered but
slave
little.
babies. You gave a slave baby in your will. Stop.
All right, so she was a child when she came into the ownership of the family, and then when his wife's mother
died.
died,
And she willed.
Then she willed Lear Green to him. So she was a mere child when she came into the hands of Noble's family, but therefore remembered little of her old mistress. Her young mistress, however, Lear's wife, had made a lasting impression upon her mind, where she was very exacting and oppressive in regard to the tasks she was daily in the habit of laying upon Lear's shoulders,
Yeah, she was mad that her husband was fucking her.
or at least lusting after her.
Right.
Definitely like this lovely young slave lady.
Waiting, waiting for the
Yeah.
night that his wife's like, no, I don't want to. And
Yeah,
he's like,
exactly.
well, I'm awake.
Pretty
What am I going
common.
to do with this?
Ugh.
God.
So at least Lear was never indulged in this respect, allowing her any liberties. In this situation, a young man by the name of William Adams proposed marriage to her. This offer she was inclined to accept, but disliked the idea of being encumbered with the chains of slavery and the duties of family at the same time.
Yeah.
I want a ring on this finger and a chain off of this wrist.
God damn it. Yeah, I mean, that seems like the better situation.
Talk about
Chain off, ring on.
Talk about a ball and chain. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God. Damn it.
We're not making any dick jokes. I got to say something. Fuck.
Okay. I can understand not wanting, being like, oh, so I get to be a slave all day and then come home and cook and clean and take care of kids.
right,
That seems like a lot for no money.
Slaving and then slaving.
Slaving and slaving.
After a full consultation with her mother and also her intended upon the matter, she decided that she must be free in order to fill the station of a wife and a mother.
Mm-hmm.
For a time, dangers and difficulties in the way of escape seemed utterly to set at defiance all hope of success. Whilst every pulse was beating strong for liberty, only one chance seemed to be left, the trial of which required as much courage as it would endure the cutting off the right arm or plucking out the right eye. An old chest of substantial make, such as sailors commonly use, was procured. A quilt, a pillow, and a few articles of raiment with a small quantity of food and a bottle of water were put in it, and Lear placed therein. Strong ropes were fastened around the chest, and she was safely stowed amongst the ordinary freight on one of the Erickson line of steamers.
That a girl.
Dude,
I
so
love it.
So this wasn't like some carriage taking her across state lines. This is like
She's on a steamer.
she's on a steamer ship.
That's fucking incredible.
Her intended's mother, who was a free woman, agreed to come as a passenger on the same boat. How could she refuse? The prescribed rules of the company assigned colored passengers to the deck.
So we can insinuate based off of this that the fiance and the fiance's mother are both free.
Yes.
Because
It seems like the
coming along
fiance,
as a passenger.
fiance's a barman, right?
Right,
So
right,
he's
right.
yeah.
Well, I'm sure there were probably slave barmen.
Yeah, but I think he was.
It sounds like, based on the context clues here, that they were free.
The prescribed rules of the company assigned colored passengers to the deck. In this instance, it was exactly where this guardian and mother desired to be, as near the chest as possible.
Hell yeah.
Once or twice during the silent watches of the night, she was drawn irresistibly to the chest and could not refrain from venturing to untie the rope and raise the lid a little to see if the poor child still lived, and at the same time to give her a breath of fresh air. Without uttering a whisper, that frightful moment, this office was successfully performed. The silent prayers of this oppressed young woman, together with her faithful protectors, were momentarily ascending to the ear of the good God above. There's a lot of that kind of shit in here.
Yeah.
But it's not to be doubted for a moment, but that some ministering angel aided the mother to unfasten the rope. After she had passed 18 hours in the chest, the steamer arrived at the wharf in Philadelphia, and in due time, the living freight was brought off the boat, and at first was delivered at a house in Barley Street, occupied by particular friends of the mother.
18 hours.
18 hours in a box, baby.
In a little chest.
18 hours to freedom. And then, of course, there's a bounty on your head, and then
I'll
you're running.
bet you anything that she got in that fucking chest without a second thought, because 18 hours is nothing compared to a lifetime of this bullshit.
In this place, she was married to William Adams, who has been previously alluded to. They never went to Canada, but took upon their permanent abode in Elmira. The brief space of about 3 years only was allotted her in which to enjoy freedom, as death came and terminated her career. Now, that's a bummer ending, but
that is a bummer ending.
It's
but
it fucking 1700s. She's 18 already.
At least she got at least she got 3 years of hopefully a happy marriage, and you know, certainly freedom is a fucking far cry from what you've been dealing with, you know, the first 18 years of your life. But Jesus.
Yeah. The chest in which Lear escaped has been preserved by the writer as a rare trophy, and her photograph taken while in the chest is an excellent likeness of her and at the same time a fitting memorial. So William still actually kept this chest.
The chest, and with a photo of her. Wow.
Pretty fucking cool. That's a pretty fucking cool story.
She must have been super pretty. Everybody's like, yeah, let me get a photo.
Oh, there's like a lithograph right here. I'll show you.
Well, I can't tell shit from that.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
The drawing of a lady in a box. I don't know. I mean, in 17 something, you'd have been like, oh, what a rare beauty.
That's spank bank material in 1700s. Lady in a box. Oh my God.
Let's pull another one. Here's one called "He Was Abuseful."
Okay.
This passenger reported himself from Macy's Crossroads near Georgetown, Maryland. William gave as his reason for being found destitute and under the necessity of asking aid that a man by the name of William Boyer, who followed farming, had deprived him of his hard earnings and also claimed him as his property, and withal that he had abused him for years and recently had threatened to sell him. This threat made his yoke too intolerable to be borne. So this is a guy who was free, worked for a guy, and after a while, the guy was like, oh yeah, no, I own you. I wasn't like paying you, like you're my slave.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he here began to think and plan for the future as he had never done before. Fortunately, he was possessed with more than an average amount of mother wit, and he soon comprehended the requirements of the Underground Railroad.
Wit.
Mother wit is like,
Nope.
diligence is the mother of good luck, that kind of shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have not heard that
Necessity is the mother of invention.
I've
like,
heard that one.
He was possessing some of the mother of wit, whatever that is.
I got you.
Probably being enslaved and needing to get the fuck out of there.
So he was enslaved and
being enslaved and needing to get the fuck out of there.
No,
is
but
the mother of wit.
I missed the first part. I didn't miss it, but I'm trying to just translate the information in my brain. So he was a slave to this guy,
Mhm.
and then the guy said, "What was he expecting?"
He was like, hey, you're supposed to pay me. And the guy was like, no, you're my slave and shut the fuck up or I'll sell you.
But how long was he his slave before that was?
It doesn't really say. He said that he'd abused him for years and recently threatened to sell him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he was under the impression, I thought I was getting paid for this.
Yeah, he's like, getting paid and not getting whipped. Now get back to work. So he possessed with more than an average amount of mother wit and soon comprehended the requirements of the Underground Railroad. He saw exactly that he must have resolution and self-dependency very decided in order to gain the victory over his enslaver. In his hour of trial, his wife and child, who were free, caused him much anxiety.
Yeah.
They were fucking with him. But his reason taught him
I'm
that
thinking
it was
just the anxiety of like, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger on this. Like, then I'm sure when you're resigned to your fate, you do things to maybe not think about that so much.
Uh-huh.
But you gotta like put yourself in those shoes where like now you've gone, okay, I'm fucking running away, and you're ready to pull the trigger. And now the thought of like seeing your wife and child, you know what I mean? Like that's gotta add a lot of anxiety.
Well, his reason taught him that it was his duty to throw off the yoke at all hazards. He acted accordingly. Of course, he left behind his wife and child.
Oh, he left them behind. I thought they were free.
They were free.
They were free. He wasn't.
I mean, like if he's escaping with them and they're caught, what's the punishment again?
Fuck.
Yeah.
I thought they were free elsewhere.
Yeah,
he was about going to them.
He was about 28 years of age. No, I mean there was free black people.
Presumably
because he was free too, and then he got enslaved.
Right. Presumably they could just travel to wherever he ended up.
Presumably, but traveling's hard, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here.
Fuck.
There are a couple on here that I really want to get to. All right. This one is entitled Arrival from North Carolina, 1857. Harry Grimes, George Upshur, and Edward Lewis. And then the subtitle is Feet Slit for Running Away, Flogged, Stabbed, Stayed in the hollow of a big poplar tree, visited by a snake, abode in a cave.
Fuck. That's a lot of bad things all in one sentence.
Abode in a cave sounds kind of fun.
Not when it's the last
not after
thing.
Fucking feet slit.
Yeah, not when it's the last thing in that sentence.
Jesus Christ.
when you already dealt with all the things in that sentence, you're like, can I just fucking lay down for 2 seconds in like a comfy place? No, this cave, that's it? All right, fuck, fine. It's been a week.
Wilmington, the 11th month, the 25th, 1857. Respected friend William Still, I write to inform thee that Captain Fountain has arrived this evening from the south with 3 men, one of which is nearly naked and very lousy. He's been in the swamps of Carolina for 18 months past.
Holy shit.
One of the others had been some time out. I would send them on tonight, but I will have to provide 2 of them with some clothes before they can be sent by railroad. I have forgotten the number of thy house. As at most likely, all or more are more or less lousy, having been compelled to sleep together. I thought best to write thee so that thee may get a suitable place to take to them, and meet them at the Broad and Prime Street on the arrival of the cars about 11 o'clock tomorrow evening. I've engaged one of our men to take them to the house and go to Philadelphia with them tomorrow evening. Johnson, who will accompany them, is a man in whom we can confide. Please send me the number of thy house. win thee rights. And that's Thomas Garrett. So this epistle from
18
months in the swamps
swamp.
of the Carolinas.
God.
That's not a fucking hospitable swamp, man.
Damn
Not
it.
that there are many hospitable swamps, mind you.
No, there
I
are.
guess Yoda was in a pretty hospitable swamp if you're a Jedi.
Yeah.
You know, the swamps of sadness.
If you're
always
in
gets me.
his house, hut.
So this epistle from an old friend of the fugitive, Thomas Garrett, excited unusual interest. This is William still speaking. You know, he got this letter and he's like, "Oh shit, let's get to it."
Right.
Preparation was immediately made to give the fugitives a kind reception, at the same time to destroy their plagues, root and branch, without mercy, which would be like lice, louse.
Right. Getting rid of
Yeah.
the lice.
They arrived according to appointment. The cleansing process was carried into effect most thoroughly, and no vermin were left to tell the tale of suffering they'd caused.
It's a funny way of saying we deloused these
We
guys.
deloused them, yeah. We got them a bath and cleaned them up.
And no vermin was alive to tell the tale of their suffering.
They talked a lot back
I
when. And
know.
like ink must have been real cheap. I don't know. No vermin were left to tell the tale of the suffering they'd caused. Straight away, the passengers were made comfortable in every way, and the spirit of freedom seemed to be burning like fire shut up in the bones.
Good.
Shut Up in the Bones is a good band name.
Shut up or shut up?
Shut up. Shut up.
Shut up in the
SHUT.
bones.
Shut up in the bones. Fire shut up in the bones.
Nice.
The appearance alone of these men indicated their manhood and their wonderful natural abilities. So they're obviously pretty
Stout
fellas. Yeah. The examining committee were very desirous of hearing their story without a moment's delay. As Harry, from having suffered most, was the hero of this party, and withal was an intelligent man,
He must have been the one that was in the swamp for
Yeah.
18 months.
and the one that was the lousiest, like the fucking worst condition.
Yeah.
He was first called upon to make his statement as to how times had been with him in the prison house from his youth up. He was about 46 years of age, according to his reckoning, a full 6 feet high, and in a muscular appearance was very rugged, and in his countenance were evident marks of firmness. This is a big, tough guy. Right?
Yeah.
He said that he was
got some
born
scars,
a,
got
yeah.
some muscles,
Oh, yeah.
sinewy.
He was born a slave in North Carolina, had been sold 3 times. He was first sold when a child, 3 years of age, the second time when he was 13 years old, and the third and last time he was sold to Jesse Moore, from whom he fled. Prior to his coming into the hands of Moore, he had not experienced any very hard usage, at least nothing more severe than fell to a common lot of slave boys. Therefore, the period of his early youth was deemed of too little interest to record in detail. In fact, time only could be afforded for noticing very briefly some of the more remarkable events of his bondage. The examining committee confined their interrogations to his last taskmaster.
This Jesse guy.
Yes, Jesse Moore.
Yeah.
How did Moore come by you was one of the inquiries. Well, he bought me, said Harry, of a man by the name of Taylor 9 or 10 years ago. He was as bad as he could be. Couldn't be any worse to be alive. He was about 50 years of age when I left him, a right red-looking man, big-bellied old fellow, weighs about 240 pounds.
Jesus.
He drinks hard. He's just like a rattlesnake, just as cross and crabbed when he speaks. Seems like he could go through you. He flogged Richmond for not plowing the corn good. That's what he was pretending to whip him for. Richmond ran away, was away 4 months, as much as I can guess. Then they cotched him, then struck him 100 lashes, and then they split both feet to the bone and split both his insteps, and then Master took his knife and stuck it into him in many places.
Oh my God.
After he'd done him that way, he put him into the barn for shucking corn. It's like, yeah, he stabbed him, cut the shit out of him, and then he was like, yeah, now shuck some corn.
Now sit here and shuck corn.
Yeah. For a long time, he was not able to work. When he did partly recover, he was set to work again. We ceased to record anything further concerning Richmond, although not a fourth part of what Harry narrated was put upon paper. So shit was a lot worse than that.
Right.
The account was too sickening, and the desire to hear
This
Harry's...
is the guy that had most recently owned him? This was the Jesse guy?
Yeah.
Or this was the guy
Yeah.
that... Okay.
Yeah. It was
Okay.
the Jesse guy who
Okay.
had done that to another man named Richmond.
God.
The desire to hear Harry's account of himself was too great to admit of further delay, so Harry confined himself to the sufferings and adventures which he had marked his own life. Briefly, he gave the following facts. I have been treated bad. One day, we were grubbing, and Master said we didn't do work enough. How come there was no more work done that day, said Master to me. I told him I did work. In a more stormy matter, he peated the question.
Mm-hmm.
I then spoke up and said, Master, I don't know what to say. At once, Master plunged his knife into my neck, causing me to stagger. Master was drunk. He then drove me down to the black folks' house, which is the cabin of the slaves. He then got his gun, called the overseer, and told him to get some rope. While he was gone, I said, Master, now you're going to tie me up and cut me all to pieces for nothing. I would just as lieve you would take your gun and shoot me down as tie me up and cut me all to pieces for nothing. In a great rage, he said, go. I jumped, and he put up his gun and snapped both barrels at me. He then set his dogs on me, but as I had been in the habit of making much of them, feeding them, and etc., they would not follow me, and I kept on straight to the woods. My master and the overseer hotched the horses and tried to run me down, but as the dogs would not follow me, they couldn't make nothing of it. It was the last of August a year ago. The devil was into him, and he flogged and beat 4 of the slaves, 1 man and 3 of the women, and said if he could only get a hold of me, he wouldn't strike me nary a lick, but would tie me to a tree and empty both barrels into me. In the woods, I lived on nothing, you may say, and something too. I had bread, and roasting ears, which is corn. I had taters, so wild potatoes. What's taters, Precious?
I was literally going to say, what's taters,
I should have let it ride. I stayed in the hollow of a big poplar tree for 7 months. 7 months. The other part of the time, I stayed in a cave. I suffered mighty bad with the cold and for something to eat. Once I got me some charcoal and made a fire in my tree to warm me, and it liked to kill me, so I had to take the fire out. One time a snake come to the tree, poked his head into the hollow, and was coming in, and I took my axe and chopped him in 2. It was a poplar leaf moccasin, the poisonous kind of snake we have. While in the woods, all my thoughts was how to get away to a free country. Subsequently, in going back over his past history, he referred to the fact that on occasion long before the cave and the tree, already noticed when suffering under the brutal master, he sought protection in the woods and abode 27 months in a cave. So he had run away previously and lived in the fucking woods.
For
this guy's
2+ years.
Yeah, we're looking at like almost 3 years of this guy just living in the woods.
Wilderness, yeah.
Yeah.
Wilderness
No wonder
surviving.
no wonder he looked like a badass.
I was going to say wilderness surviving with like not being able to come out whenever you want because
Essentially,
you're
you
a wanted man.
The hermit in the woods, man.
Holy
Just by your
shit.
Can you imagine that? Living in the woods by yourself for years without like contact with people?
But no, you'd be afraid
Yeah,
to contact.
who are you going to talk to?
Yeah.
Remember we talked on
If
that.
anybody sees you, you might be fucked.
Yeah, we talked in that first episode of like if you're an escaping slave and you come across like native children.
Yeah.
You know, like how you feel about that. Yeah. That you can't talk to anyone.
Holy
Nothing's safe.
Shit.
Because I mean, with a master like that, you already stabbed him in the fucking neck, right? Like,
what kind of knife was he using? Because all
not
these
a very
guys are
good one.
surviving.
Not a great one. Maybe a little stubby guy.
The first guy he stabbed a bunch of times.
I had the feeling that this master was just a fat, weak old bitch.
It sounds like he's a fucking drunk, sadistic, fucking abusive piece of shit. And
yeah, like his stabbing is just more torturous than it is like deep fucking. Ugh.
Jesus Christ.
So his offense in the instance in which he stayed in the woods for 27 months was simply because he desired to see his wife and stole away from his master's plantation and went a distance of 5 miles to where she lived to see her. For this grave crime, his master threatened to give him 100 lashes and to shoot him. In order to avoid this punishment, he escaped to the woods, and etc. The lapse of a dozen years and recent struggles for an existence made him think lightly of his former troubles and would doubtless have failed to recall his earlier conflicts but for the desire manifested by the committee to get all the information out of him that they could. He was next asked, "Had you a wife and family?" "Yes, sir," he answered. "I had a wife and 8 children belonged to the widow Slade." Here he gave the names of his wife and his children as follows. Wife Susan, children Oliver, Saby, Washington, Daniel, Jonas, Harriet, Moses, and Rosetta. The last named he had never seen. Between my mistress and my master, there was not much difference.
So master's wife was as much of a piece of shit.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Between my mistress and my master, there was not much difference.
Yeah, exactly.
God damn it.
Yeah, so that's that story.
Well, she probably wasn't doing the stabby, but she was probably like, stab him.
Yeah, but also like
go stab him, Jesse.
8 children, all owned by them. You know, his
by
wife.
The other lady.
Yes, his wife probably endured similar forms of abuse and cruelty, but enough to make him fuck off for multiple years in the woods.
God damn. Well, I mean, at least he finally got north.
He got away.
We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to ever do that again.
We're not going to ever do that again.
We certainly, I know that Drew already isolated that soundbite and has it somewhere on his fucking computer, and I will find it.
All right,
Drew's shaking his head at me.
All right, now it has been a long road to freedom here, but I think we're gonna wrap up the Underground Railroad series with one more tale.
By the way, with also disclaimer that these are not the only stories that we could do.
There are 800 pages in this fucking book. We're doing like 4 or 5.
Yeah,
like
we could do so many of these.
it's endless. The history. The reason that we had to do a whole third episode was specifically because there are so many fucking stories here, and they're all individual people and they all revolve around the fucking individual personal struggle for freedom, and that's like there's nothing more human than that.
And and like, you know, certainly if you've been listening, like you can see how many, like they're so equally mind-blowing and heartbreaking and inspire. Like there's just so many things.
Everything. It's all the emotions.
Yeah.
You know, there's a long-standing kind of rule in writing that there's only like 7 stories you can tell. You know, it's like the hero's journey or the rebirth or the call to adventure or shit like that. But they're all encompassed in this. Like,
right.
These are people who are struggling for freedom for, you know, their own fear of death, or maybe for the love of another, or for their own pride, or
reuniting with their family.
Exactly. Yeah. Or look at fucking Harriet Tubman's just like fucking drown him. Just don't let him take him. Like that's just pure spit in the face, you know?
Yeah, but that dude was probably like, yes.
Yeah, fuck yeah, drown me. I don't give a shit.
I don't want to go back to that bullshit.
Not this dickhead brother of mine. Fuck this guy. Okay, so
God, you thought you didn't like your brother. Jesus.
All right, so this one has a bit of a title, several names, okay?
Okay.
Barnaby Grigby, alias John Boyer, and Mary Elizabeth, his wife. Frank Wanzer, alias Robert Scott. Emily Foster, alias Ann Wood. 2 others who started with them were captured. That's the title of the story.
I'd change my name from Barnaby, too.
Barnaby Grigby? Barnaby Grigby picks up the rice in a church where a wedding has been.
What?
Anybody?
Eleanor Rigby?
All these persons journeyed together from Loudoun County, Virginia, on horseback and in a carriage for more than 100 miles, availing themselves of a holiday and their this is a little tongue-in-cheek, availing themselves of a holiday and their master's horses and carriage.
Oh, Jesus.
They as deliberately started for Canada.
It sounds like they were with the master on holiday.
No, though they are availing themselves of a holiday and their master's horses. So...
You don't think they were out with the master? Like
no,
the master's like, where?
No, they're escaping.
I have to go from here to here.
Slaves.
Right, but what I'm saying is I have to go from here to here, load up the horses in the carriage, and we're going to visit such and such. And they said, okay, master's going on holiday. And then they said, and we're going to skip away while he's not looking. That's what I got from that.
That's not what it is. Okay. Availing themselves of a holiday and their master's horses and carriage, they as deliberately started for Canada as though they had never been taught that it was their duty as servants to obey their masters. In this particular showing a most utter disregard of the interest of their kind-hearted and indulgent owners, they left home on Monday, Christmas Eve, 1855, under the leadership of Frank Wanzer, and arrived in Columbia the following Wednesday at 1 o'clock. As willfully as they had thus made their way along...
In Columbia?
Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they left wherever their home was, but they showed up in northern South Carolina.
Okay,
right?
Gotcha.
As willfully as they had thus made their way along, they had not found it smooth sailing by any means.
No, you're deep south. You're starting deep.
Well, the biting frost and snow rendered their travel anything but agreeable.
Sure.
Yeah. Nor did they escape the gnawings of hunger traveling day and night. And whilst these articles were in the very act of running away with themselves and their kind master's best horses and carriage, whom about 100
his horses.
When about 100 miles from home in the neighborhood of Cheat River, Maryland, they were attacked by 6 white men and a boy, who, doubtless supposing that their intentions were of a wicked and unlawful character, felt it to be their duty in kindness to their masters, if not to the travelers, to demand of them an account of themselves.
Wow. Hey, there go black people on horses.
Hey,
Let's
the fuck
shoot
are you
at 'em.
doing over here? Yeah, exactly.
Come on, little Timmy.
Yeah.
Grab a gun.
Exactly. Grab a gun. Let's corral them.
Let's go get these black people. They look like they're up to no good.
They must be up to no. There's no whites with them.
There's no whites with them.
So they demand an account of themselves. In other words, the assailants positively commanded the fugitives to show what right they possessed to be found in a condition apparently so unwarranted. The spokesman amongst the fugitives, affecting no ordinary amount of dignity, told their assailants plainly that no gentleman would interfere with persons riding along civilly, not allowing it to be supposed that they were slaves, of course. These gentlemen, however, were not willing to accept the account of the travelers, as their very decided steps indicated having the law on their side. They were for compelling the fugitives to surrender without further parley. So
You're right.
essentially, the guy's like, they walked like pigs, they talked like pigs.
Yeah, and the one fugitive slave was like, no, don't we're just riding down
hey,
the
what
street.
the fuck, man? Yeah.
Just riding horses down
Well,
the street.
you gotta
Why
come fuck with us.
yeah.
Well, we're just trying to make our way.
It's
What
like,
do you?
nope,
what's
laws
the
on our
fucking problem?
side. Show us why you're here, or we're taking you.
Show us your Negro papers.
This is not a Maryland accent, but
Yeah.
it sounds right to me by the story.
At this juncture, the fugitives, verily believing that the time had arrived for the practiced use of their pistols and dirks, pulled them out of their concealment. The young woman as well as the men, and declared that they would not be taken. One of the white men raised his gun, pointing the muzzle directly towards one of the young women with the threat that he would shoot, etc. Shoot, 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 she exclaimed, with a double-barreled pistol in one hand and a long dirk knife in the other, utterly unterrified and fully ready for a death struggle. The male leader of the fugitives by this time had pulled back the hammers of his pistols and was about to fire. Their adversaries, seeing the weapons and the unflinching determination on the part of the runaways to stand their ground, spill blood, kill, or die rather than be taken, very prudently sidled over to the other side of the road, leaving at least 4 of the victors to travel on their way. At this moment, the 4 in the carriage lost sight of the 2 on horseback. Soon after the separation, they heard firing.
Oh, no.
But what the result was, they knew not. They were fearful, however, that their companions had been captured.
Probably not great.
The following paragraph, which was shortly afterwards taken from a Southern paper, leaves no room to doubt as to the fate of the 2. 6 fugitive slaves from Virginia were arrested at the Maryland line near Hood's Mill on Christmas Day, but after a severe fight, 4 of them escaped and have not since been heard of. They came from Loudoun and Fauquier counties. Though the 4 who were successful saw no severe fight, it is not unreasonable to suppose that there was a fight nevertheless, but not till after the number of the fugitives had been reduced to 2 instead of 6. So it's like, well, the 4 didn't see a fight.
Yeah.
It's reasonable to assume there was one.
Yeah.
As chivalrous as slaveholders and slave catchers were,
Oh, I'm sure. It's super chivalrous.
they knew the value of their precious lives and the fearful risk of attempting a capture when the numbers were equal. That's
equal, I would say.
That's William
is the-
Still being like, these prudent men
Yeah.
obviously
They knew the odds of 50-50. I mean, you got to get those numbers down.
The party in the carriage after the conflict went on their way rejoicing.
Jesus Christ.
So that's that. There's one. There's just one just pretty good. We just thought it fucking pulled the guns on it.
You know, but
Yeah.
you got to wonder about those other 2.
They were captured. They were not killed.
that we know.
Well,
of.
they weren't
They got
killed
sent
in
back.
that fight.
Right. They got sent back as runaway slaves who pulled weapons on white people. And I can't imagine that. That's got to increase the punishment, right? Not only did you run away, you also got caught and then pulled weapons on white guys.
Yeah, it probably did.
That probably increased the punishment to something worse than 100 lashes.
I mean, like, at a certain point of abstraction, you really have to figure death's preferable to anything else, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I know I personally, if I was there, things would have been different. But like, if I was caught
Mark, are you here, Mark?
if I was caught in a situation like, if I was there, if I was caught in a situation where like I'm fleeing for my
There would
life
have been no
and
slaves.
I'll be
I would have taken care of all the slaves.
I'll be tortured to death if I or raped or just beaten or hobbled or had my fucking feet split or
Right.
in some accounts that I've heard chopped up with an axe
Right.
and burned in a
Right.
fire or fucking eaten. There's like so many horrifying things that could happen. I mean, a death struggle is the only thing on the table.
Right. The problem is when so many of those happen one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, and now we'll kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where the real fucking horrific shit comes into play. So,
History's tough, man.
oh God, this one has been a real tough one. A
Yeah.
real tough one. And
I'm fucking exhausted. I am fucking exhausted.
Well, I got the next few, buddy. So you're
Jesus Christ.
you're off the hook for a few weeks.
I've also been doing a bunch of shit. I helped my mom move, and fucking it's just like the last few weeks have been particularly difficult for me on multiple levels. But then also researching and just having
There's never a good time.
I mean, like, okay, so like
There's never a good time to have to dedicate hours of research.
I'm just a middle-aged white guy. I get that this isn't like my story to tell, but like putting yourself in this headspace for long enough is very fucking taxing. You know?
That's why I said earlier. I feel I've been heartbroken for the last 3 weeks talking about this, and not because I've never been heartbroken about it before, but because we like actively talking about it and actively picking apart the history and the stories and all that stuff is like, dude, I go home and I'm like,
dude, I talked to my wife about like the stuff that I'm covering, and she's like, yeah, no, imagine that being just what you think about every fucking day.
Yeah,
for
I know.
your entire life.
And
Jesus Christ.
And I hope that we've gone into this, like, if anybody has any doubt about the fact that we are fully aware of,
I want to be very
horrible
clear
it's
again. Slavery bad.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't like.
We
Drew, what are your thoughts on slavery?
Sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all on the same page here, and we all try to approach this tactfully and in a way where we are as empathetic as anybody I hope can be about it, you know.
And I think we got away with no dick jokes in this episode. Did we do any dick jokes?
Oh, not a single one.
Fuck yeah.
Not a single one. So that's good for us. That's
you see,
a first.
we can do it. We're like real historians.
It only took us 30 episodes, guys, but we did it.
We're just like David Attenborough.
Oh, basically, yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling more of a Ken Burns vibe myself.
My dearest Elizabeth.
Actually, you know what? No.
Oh, if you guys don't know Ken Burns, Google him. He's real good.
More of a Dan Carlin myself, actually.
Oh, I've definitely got.
I'm gonna talk like this every episode.
I don't even
from
know
now on.
if I don't know who I'd like compare myself to in terms of like
None of those people.
historiographer,
Neither of
yeah.
us could compare ourselves to any of those
Like,
people.
who like what funny history guys are there? That's like.
I don't know. Somebody from Drunk History.
Yeah, I got no idea. I have no idea.
You're a Will Ferrell cameo on Drunk History, and I'm I don't know, a fucking silly.
I don't want to be Will Ferrell. I don't even
silly
like Will
SNL
Ferrell.
sketch from 1993
Ugh, Will Ferrell.
with Chris Farley and right before he died.
Yeah, you're a bit of a Farley.
I both in looks and
attitude.
and drug consumption. Well, shit. I think that's going to wrap this one up.
Thank God we solved racism.
Not only this episode, but this whole chapter.
That's it. Yeah, this
It's a
whole chapter in
three-parter,
American
yeah.
history, we closed it right up. I think nobody has to talk about slavery anymore. That's over. We saved America.
That feels premature, but let's
Only time will tell.
fingers crossed on that one. If you guys like the show, best way to tell us, get on whatever you're listening to. Give us 5 stars. Leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. Also, send us a message on deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. We, again, would love to hear from you. Whatever you want to say, whatever you want to tell us, whatever you want to ask us, we're here for it. You can also follow us on Instagram, Delete Everything Podcast. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook, though we don't do anything on Facebook or Threads. Just follow us on Instagram.
Yeah,
Let's
just
keep that
Instagram.
shit
Just
simple.
do that.
Yeah. Just
We
follow
are
us on
not
Instagram.
on X.
We're not on. No, hell no. So yeah, follow us on Instagram. Like we've said before, if you want to see some visuals that we drop with when a new episode comes out, we also post a new thing on Instagram, and that's usually got some cool stuff on it. And that's the best way to sort of see the stuff that correlates with what we talked about. If you want to support us even more, Patreon's the way to do that. We've got short episodes we drop every week. They're usually about 40 minutes. Usually we've been averaging about 40 minutes on Patreon. And it's quickly become just a fucking free-for-all of
I don't think that we should have posted this last one. This last Patreon's probably bad.
Yeah.
Don't describe it.
If you join Patreon, listen to Ice Cream Barge right out the gates. You're going to love it. You're going to love it because it is out of control. Don't pay attention to any of the names of any of the Patreon episodes because We don't talk about those things. We talk about talking about those things for about the first 30 seconds, and then somebody fucking somebody doesn't knock the thing off course. Just full on fucking Spartan kicks the motherfucker off course.
I think it was me this
And
time.
it was absolutely you this
That
time.
was a good Spartan kick too, I'll say.
It was. We never recovered.
We started with Bikini Kill, and then, really launched that one into a pit.
I don't even remember what we talked about. It's all a blur. But yeah, Patreon, man. It's a fun place to be if you want to hear us in a much more unrefined.
Listen, just give us
setting.
$7 and you can be really uncomfortable for 30 to 45 minutes at a time.
Once a week. Yeah. So patreon.com/delete everything. Is it Delete Everything Podcast, right?
Oh, fuck. I don't know.
Patreon.com/Delete Everything Podcast.
I don't know, man. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. This has been mentally difficult. Anyway, that's it for us. Bye-bye.
Bye. Rock on London, rock on Chicago.